He looked through the glass and he went, what's that man in that horrible shirt? That was David Bull, which I thought was in itself quite amusing.
That's a fair point.
That was a fair point. But no, he loved it. But he didn't enjoy monster drugs. Loads going on. Where do you start?
Where do you start?
I mean, honestly, AI, I suppose, but government spending cuts, our hospitals are gridlocked.
Yeah.
Tyson Fury has retired.
Yes.
Do you think he has, or do you think that's to try and get more money for fighting? How many times has he retired before?
I think it's the third time.
Almost as many as you and I have attempted to retire.
Absolutely.
My wife has missed you. I love you. It's been a great show. And you'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
It's going to be fantastic. Busy and all the breaking news, everything you need to know.
How's Sophie?
Jeremy Carl, she's wonderful. She says hello, by the way.
Lies.
News at 4 next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hey, very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Drive, just after 4 o'clock on Monday. This is Talk, of course, home of free speech and common sense, and thank you to Ian Collins. Back tomorrow afternoon, the Housewife's Choice from 1. The voice was improving after being ill. Then I got totally trolled on Saturday night with the wife, danced and screamed a lot, and now I sound rough again. If you'd like to be part of this vain attempt at a radio programme in the next 3 hours, I hope by now, after the months we've been here, that you know how to take part. 0344 499 is 100, is 1000 is your number. That's the only one you want. You can phone us and make a call. I will say again. You can WhatsApp us and send a voice note. 0344 499 1000. Ryan's at it today. This is a man who gets excited by rubber gloves. I'll tell you more later. You can also text your message. Text the word talk and your message, whatever you want to talk about, 87222. As I say, start that message with the word talk. So much to talk about. I mean, we'll talk about government cuts. This Labour Party were elected. They were going to change everything for the better. I don't know about you, but 7 months in, they seem to be in a right old mess. There will be public spending cuts. There's been tax rises. The Chancellor went all the way to China, came back with his, "Whoa, I've got a £600 million deal," and everybody thinks she's incompetent. In fact, today, whilst giving a sort of long, detailed speech about AI, Starmer refused on 2 occasions to say that she would be sticking around. I can't wait to get into that. I don't know. We've got hospital waiting queues, 500,000 people lying on trolleys and floors. Ryan was telling me about an aged relative of his, 85, was on the floor for 6 hours in an A. We've got ambulance crews stuck at A&E. We've got thousands of people phoning 999 a day not getting through. This country does seem to be on its backside. Last week we were talking about grooming gangs and how this country is perceived. We've got, I don't know, all sorts of stuff to talk about today. The BBC licence fee could be scrapped. We've got Just Stop Oil idiots spray painting Charles Darwin's grave at Westminster Abbey. And then Tyson Fury's gone and bloody well retired for the 34th time just so he gets more money from Anthony Joshua. So much to talk about, and what better way to start a new week than in the... Well, I don't know how to describe this man. He is to broadcasting what... I don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, the great thing about this man is we don't have to call him by his first name. A very good afternoon, His Lordship. Edward Vasey, good afternoon, dear boy. How are you?
What am I to broadcasting?
You are to broadcasting what Elon Musk is to personal relationships. I've got a great one to start with you, Vasey. Listen to this. This is how mad the world's gone. And you're a bit of a liberal nowadays.
But don't tell me.
No, listen. A council has been criticised for telling its staff not to ask people for their Christian name. Sutton Council in southwest London has said that the question could be offensive in what has been branded hypersensitivity taken to ridiculous lengths. That's why we put you on, because you can be Lord Vasey. We don't have to say Ed in case it offends you.
Exactly. I mean, honestly. There's what's next? AD and BC.
I don't know.
Are we going to say Julius Caesar invaded when? I always say 44 BC.
You're not allowed to say anything like that.
What year is it? It's 2025 AD. It is. The year of our Lord.
The year of our Lord.
You know,
are you offended if I say Ed? Are you offended if I go, oi, Ed? Are you okay with that or what?
Of course I'm not okay with that. I paid a lot for this peerage and I intend to be addressed as Lord Vasey. But if you say to me, what is your Christian name, I'm perfectly comfortable with that, as are most right-thinking people in this country. And the great irony of the do-gooders who tell us we can't use the word Christian name in case we offend people is that all the people who might in theory be offended, i.e. people who aren't Christians, who follow a different faith, aren't offended in the slightest, just as people aren't offended if they happen to cover their heads when they go to a Middle Eastern country in order to comply with the norms, cultural norms of that country, just as Brits who go and live in America celebrate the 4th of July, even though we're celebrating the fact that those pesky colonists, colonized people broke free from the yoke, the benign rule of the Brits. So you understand the kind of embedded culture of the country where you live, whether you were born here or whether you've immigrated here, and nobody gets worked up about it in the slightest, Jeremy.
Good man, Lord Vasey. So much to talk to you about.
I started well there, didn't I? I started well.
I think it's to me, you've started too well, and I fear you might be a 3-minute wonder, Vasey. I'm slightly worried that you're going to just sort of peter out into complete mundane ordinariness. Let's start.
You can do all of on the one hand, on the other.
Oh, I know. Now listen,
that's my normal default position.
I've heard about your normal default position. Could I just say that don't start me, I've got to be serious. Before we get into this huge debate about Starmer, which seems to happen every day, when this government was elected on the back of the least popular government ever, let's be perfectly honest, the British people had stopped listening to the Tories, I think whatever they were going to say at the last election. And he won this huge majority, but it was never sort of rock solid because it was based entirely on dissatisfaction with the Tories. I don't think I've ever known in my 60 years a government so unpopular after such a short... 60 on July the 7th.
You do look good on it, Jeremy.
Do you want to say...
It really pains me to say it. I know it's an expensive hair weave, but you do look good.
It's not a hair weave, but I haven't moved my face for 15 years. I'm as shallow as anything, maybe. There we go. Keir Starmer. Now we seem to have the perfect storm. This government can't cut taxes. In fact, they've raised them. This government are now saying they're going to be ruthless public spending cuts. They seem to have based their entire economic sort of setup on growth, but quite how last October's budget does anything for growth when it's single-handedly attacking anybody with a small business is beyond me. And he found himself today having to defend Rachel Reeves. I mean, I just want to play this clip to you. This is Starmer dodging a question from a reporter who said, will she be your Chancellor long term? Have a listen and a watch of this, my friends.
Will Rachel Reeves be your Chancellor at the next general election?
I'll be really clear. We're going to stick to the fiscal rules. That is a very important thing that we've said throughout. We set out those fiscal rules very early on in the day. Because we knew that the missing ingredient in recent years has been economic stability. We're determined to bring about that economic stability, and that's why the fiscal rules are absolutely central to what we do.
Ed, I know you and I laugh and joke a lot. Serious question before we get into detail. He never inspires me when he's publicly speaking. He looks like a school teacher who's following notes. He never seems to get it right. There's no authority, is there?
He's not the most charismatic of people, and you know, a lot of people think Keir Starmer can't do politics. You know, he was a lawyer first before he became a politician. Some people who were optimistic about this government thought that might be a strength. You know, we're used to insurgents, even people like Nigel Farage saying, you know, we're not part of the establishment, we're different. But Keir Starmer doesn't get politics, he doesn't get optimism, he can't sort of give us a sense of the destination that we're going in. You know, we want our Prime Minister to say everything is going to be okay, it's going to be painful, but we're getting there, we know what we're doing. And the trouble is, to be serious for a moment, as you say, we've had the amuse-bouche of Christian names, but to be serious for a minute, if you know, this government in one sense is unassailable. It's got an enormous majority. It will be in power for the next 3 years, pretty much come what may. So it's got time to make long-term decisions and tough them out. But if you are already answering questions 6 months into a government this strong, they'd never have asked them about Gordon Brown. Is your Chancellor still going to be in position? Now, of course, it's a journalistic trick. It's impossible to say you'd have the same Chancellor at the end of your first term as you would at the beginning of your first term. That's fair enough. But people are even saying, is she going to last this year? And that is a terrible position to be in, because your Chancellor, as Margaret Thatcher discovered, is the most important member of your cabinet. Absolutely. And if your Chancellor is under threat, is seen as weak, or is seen as you know, that the parliamentary party is out to get her because they think she's the weak link, then you really are in some kind of trouble, like I am with trying to get my camera centred.
You're doing fine.
There we go.
So talking about this man, we've talked about the chat. We've talked about, you know, this seeming, and I thought you nailed that when you said there doesn't seem to be a plan. We're not taking a direction. I don't hear him say, look, it's not going to be easy. This might happen. This might happen. It seems to be a day-to-day thing. We've got the situation with Reeves and with public spending. We've got the ludicrous situation that in 6 short months he's already got rid of his chief of staff, and now he's anti-corruption minister, Tulip Siddiq, tied in through relations that her aunt was the PM of Bangladesh, thrown out. There's now questions being asked about properties and stuff like that. In a very short space of time, Ed, it's almost like a daily occurrence. And this man, to me, and I'm not saying this for the right or the right, he just looks out of his depth. There's no turbocharge. As you said it, there's nothing that really motivates me about Keir Starmer, and I can be far more hard on him, which I will in a minute, but I just don't buy the man. I just don't think he does politics particularly well, like you said.
The Prime Minister learns on the job, and we can all look back to what Blair might have been like in the early months of 1997, and I also accept that an incoming Labour government does tend to get hard time from the right-wing press. You know, the Daily Mail's not going to give an incoming Labour government a 24-hour honeymoon period. It's going to go straight for the solar plexus. But the point is, you saw Blair learning on the job, getting more comfortable, and also he had in Gordon Brown a very heavyweight chancellor, and they had big economic announcements early on. Now, granted, the 1997 Labour government did inherit a very strong economy in the way that this government has not. But all of what we're seeing are self-inflicted wounds. And the things that drove me mad were we had 3 months of the new government talking down the economy and talking down the country in order to gain political advantage. Their strategy was, let's fix in the public's mind just how bad the last government was. Public didn't need to be told that. Public knew how bad the last government was. That's why they threw them out. And then they had a budget finally, people wondered, why did you need this budget? And it was a kamikaze budget. You know, I sat down with someone today. You mentioned small business earlier. I sat down with a friend. We were just talking about his business. He said, this year, I would have hired 7 people. It's not going to move the dial. It's not going to, you know, we're not talking Google here. He's going to hire 1 person this year.
Yeah.
Now, there are millions of small businesses in this country. If they're all taking the same view, we are in deep trouble.
I obviously come from a different land, because I would have thought that new businesses, small businesses, the lifeblood of any idea of growth, because they employ people, they create wealth, it peters down into society. I don't understand it. Let's talk about your good political friend, Nigel Farage. It was a big I mean, listen, quite rightly, and I was really outspoken about this last week, the grooming gangs, and I'll go further and call them rape gangs. And I want to put this to you, actually, and I'm strong to put this to you. Farage today accusing Wes Streeting of covering up the truth. Let me put this to you as an ex-member of the Tory government, because this is not at Starmer's door. It's at his door that he won't have a public inquiry. This goes back years, Ed. And I said on Thursday, and I make no apology for this, that if you and I were looking in at Great Britain from another country, in the last year we'd say, so the highest person in the English church has been thrown out for covering up paedophilia. We have one of the most revered newsreaders is now had a suspended sentence because he and his mates can look at disgusting images of 7-year-olds and not go to prison. And then it turns out that the establishment, I don't know who, has covered up rape gangs for the best part of 20 years. That, to me, is a stain on the United Kingdom. I want to ask you this without fear or favour. Your government, the Tories, surely more could have been done about this. Why has this been swept under the carpet, Ed? Because it frightens me.
There's a lot to unpack there, and there is another side to this story which the government has tried to get out, which is incredible, which is that Keir Starmer did get proactive on the rape gangs, changed the rules, prosecuted a lot of people went to prison. They were brought up, as you know, by the newspapers 10, 15 years ago, and in fact, it was a Times journalist who since retired but came out of retirement to write about it, who did actually say, hold on, this is not all one-sided black and white. There was some merit in what Keir Starmer did as the Director of Public Prosecution in bringing these prosecutions. So it was journalists, the Times newspaper, that exposed this scandal, but there was action. We also have this inquiry that happened 2 or 3 years ago, which wasn't actioned either by the last government or indeed by this government, with 20 recommendations. We've had Alexis Jay, who led that inquiry, all over the airways, basically saying if Elon Musk hadn't brought this up, this would have remained gathering dust. It's now firmly in ministers' in trays. I think there are 2 things that people want. One is that they want the recommendations of this inquiry implemented. This includes, for example, that it's a criminal offence not to report sexual abuse when you know about it. These kind of changes that are needed. There does need to be an inquiry, and the inquiry needs to be about what is the culture in a community that enables this to happen. What are the factors? And it's not just the community, whether it's a Pakistani heritage, it could be a white heritage community. It's also what allows a culture to pervade in the authorities, which turn a blind eye or think there's nothing to see here,
so
or
let me take you
blame the victims.
I completely agree. Let me take you up on that point very quickly. I said this last week. A lot of people looked down on the floor when I said it. I don't care. This has, to me, in my mind, go so high and so deep, Ed, because the basics, the morality, the disgusting, repugnant, vile crimes that are committed against these kids. Are you telling me that all these people thought it was all right just to let this go? This has to go far deeper. As a society, to me, that is an absolute disgrace. Whatever your political persuasion, however far back, somebody, maybe a lot of people, I don't know, social services, the police, I don't know, I don't know. But for me, those kids in this country, in the United Kingdom, whatever the race, colour, creed of the victims or the people that have carried it out, utterly, utterly disgusting. One more thing. You're a very busy man. Our finances are in the hole. Children, sadly, are being abused. 500,000 people lay on hospital trolleys for 12 hours or more in 2024 as ambulance crews continue to be stuck at A&E, missing 999 calls in their thousands. We've talked about the NHS till the bleeding cows come out. It needs more money. It needs to get rid of the diversity officers. Why is this body, this something that was once revered, on its backside, genuinely? Because it needs changing, doesn't it?
needs fundamental change, and we need to bring in the private sector. I've always said this. Blair brought in the private sector. We need to get rid of the backlog, which you can do if you treat this like a sort of wartime situation. If you treat it a bit like the COVID situation, you get moving. And this includes really, we get this statistic, 7.6 million people waiting for hospital appointments. What does that actually mean? Does that mean just a follow-up appointment to check that you should still be having statins, which is the most kind of unimportant thing in the world? Or does it mean you're waiting for a heart transplant operation, which is the most important thing in the world? We could do all the cataracts with the private sector. We could do the knee replacements with the private sector. We could do the hip replacements with the private sector. And we need to find a way for GPs to stop allowing people to go to A&E when they have a niggle and a pain and it's just too difficult to go and see a GP, so they nip to their hospital A&E. That's got to stop as well.
How do we do it in a potted version?
In their community.
In a potted version, how do we do that, briefly?
Well, you forget the unions, forget the principles and the socialism, and just say we're going to pay the equivalent of Tesco to do 500,000 knee operations this year and get them off the waiting list and get those people back into a productive economy.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, apart from, obviously, I wouldn't want my knee done at Tesco's. It's been a privilege to speak to you today. You look like you're in some sort of sports top there, as if you've been out running and working out. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I'm Mr. Fit. Look at that.
You're ripped now, aren't you?
Ripped.
I went running and ripped all the muscles that I had. Lord Edward Vasey, an absolute pleasure and never a chore. You can hear him on Times Radio, apparently, at some point at the weekends, Friday evenings. Very, very good. 0344, where are you, my friends? 0344 419 1000. That is the telephone number. You can voice note to our Ryan, or Mia is here, because Jodie, this is really interesting, is in Lapland. I know, you're supposed to go before Christmas, but apparently if you go in January, it's half the price. She's stuck in snow. Mia's taking your calls, 0344 419 1000. This is Talk Drive.
Going to be bidding to go back in the EU in all but name. Do you fear that the whole of Brexit is going to be undermined?
I mean, of course, they would love to go back into the EU. That's taken as read. The only reason they're saying they won't join the customs union and single market is because they can see public opinion doesn't really like it.
I thought we were told that Brexiteers no longer think it was worth doing. That's what I keep being told. I've not met a Brexiteer who thinks that, but
they know the reality, and that's why they have to go about it in this secretive way.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 4:25. It's Monday afternoon. We're live across the UK. This is JK on Drive on the home of common sense and free speech. You're with Talk. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. Whatever you want to talk about, 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Steve says if AI had been introduced 10 years ago, Rachel from Bleeding Accounts wouldn't have a job. Liam says there's a lot to be said about grooming gangs, and rightly so, but the UK, Jez, if we're honest, has a child abuse problem dating back. Think Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris, Hugh Edwards, all in the public eye, and yet apparently not a damn soul knew. The issue in my mind, says Liam, goes so much deeper. That is exactly what I say. And Graham Pack says Rachel Reeve wasn't even Starmer's first choice for Chancellor. If you remember back, Annalisa Dodds was his shadow Chancellor. She got the boot. Yeah, well, this is on the back of the fact that today Keir Starmer was talking about AI, refused to say whether she would be his Chancellor till the end of his premiership. That's very interesting. Now, it's very rare that we get a big Elon Musk, friend on Drive Time with Jeremy Kyle. We said very good afternoon. Reform UK's MP for Great Yarmouth, Rupert Lowe. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Jeremy. How are you?
Well, I'm all right.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, but I must start slightly differently, Rupert, because before we talk about Musk and everything else, a council has been criticised today for telling its staff not to ask people for their Christian name. This is Sutton Council. Mr. Lowe in South London has said that the question could be offensive in what has been branded hypersensitivity taken to ridiculous lengths. Are you all right with us calling you Rupert, Mr. Lowe?
I'm delighted that you call me by my Christian name. I would be upset if you called me by anything else. And frankly, I think all of us have had enough of this poppycock that's been going on sort of throughout both national government and local government. I mean, they need to just sharpen up, wake up and start behaving with a bit of common sense and a bit of logic, really.
Honestly, mate, to me, it becomes more simple on a daily basis. Common sense has to be it. Reform, talk, all these places. I don't understand it. It's offensive to call somebody by their name. What are we going to get to? Let's get to it, Rupert. So much. Listen, can we just talk Musk quickly? I mean, he thinks you're fantastic, Elon Musk. What's that? Are you still all right with Nige? I mean, Nige isn't going, oh, horrible you, everything's fine, right? What's going on?
I put out a good statement, Jeremy. I mean, the fact that Elon Musk likes some of my tweets is a matter of pride. I love that. And I think it doesn't do reform any harm to have people like Elon Musk, who's arguably the most entrepreneurial entrepreneur on the planet, who is following what we're doing. And I think he's clearly got, correctly, an issue with the lack of an inquiry into the grooming gangs. And what's been happening throughout a lot of our sort of northern and Midlands towns, and indeed in my hometown, Oxford, it's been happening there as well. So I think we want an inquiry, we want to know the facts, and frankly, as you know, I think anyone who's perpetrated these heinous crimes should be, if they're a foreign national, they should be deported, and I think it's vile what's been happening.
Mate, I am so with you. And actually, somebody said something to me. I know Nigel today has accused West Reading of covering up the truth. I don't even call them grooming gangs. I call them rape gangs. I think he's an absolute stain on our society. I fear I'm completely with you about foreign nationals. I'm also completely with you.
I called them rape gangs in Parliament, and I think a lot of the virtue signalling do-gooders got upset by the fact they said the language was too strong. Well,
really? Well, try telling that to an 8-year-old who's been raped by 4 or 5 men. These people are ridiculous. They need to get their heads out of Westminster and see what's going on. So with you, Rupert. And here's the other thing as well. I mean, I said to somebody earlier on this show, this is the United Kingdom. Right? Where the Archbishop of Canterbury's had to go for covering up paedophilia in the church. You've got Hugh Edwards and all his cronies who don't even go to jail for looking at vile images. I fear that these rape gangs, grooming gangs, whatever, as you quite rightly said, are spread across this country in far greater numbers. But what concerns me as a father is that this has been covered up for years. And I'm with you about heinous crime, but I don't know how high this goes or how deep this goes, but this is a disgrace. This is a United Kingdom.
That's why we need an inquiry, Jeremy, and not a sort of an inquiry that skates over the surface. Yeah. I think we want a proper inquiry that has all the drains up. And if this has been happening, whatever the reason it's been hidden, whether it's, a bloc Asian vote which is supporting Labour, whether it's a fear of being called racist, I think what we want is the drains up. We want all the facts out there, and then the British public can judge for themselves. As you know, I'm an advocate for transparent government, and I think what we've got here is a very opaque situation that needs the light shone in on it.
I think it needs completely the light shone on it. I mean, we've got a Prime Minister who presumably is concerned about losing the Muslim vote. I don't understand, and maybe this is a step too far for some people at 4:30 in the afternoon. I don't sit here and imagine that everything is down to a certain colour, creed or race, but I certainly would love to hear from some Muslim leaders and people. I've spoken to many Muslims who say this is a disgrace and people need to come out and say that in their number. But for me as a society, it's an absolute disgrace and they need to sort it out. Let's talk about this government then. Mr. Lowe, Rupert, I'm joking. Keir Starmer spent many years saying that the Tories had messed up, and we all know that the British public had stopped listening to the Tories because they became a sort of centrist version of Labour, I felt, which is why I voted for reform, and so many people had always voted for the Tory party did, because you talked about the things as a party that I was brought up on, which was low taxation, a strong military, not a fear of, crime, but police, men and women on the streets, etc., etc. We've talked about the cancellation of the winter heating bills. We've talked about all that. Today we discovered this government that can't lower taxes and in fact lied and raises them is standing by for public spending cuts that will be ruthless and will impact still further on services and thus people who are really struggling. And it's almost like this country's swallowed the biggest con in the world, Rupert, isn't it?
I think whatever you want to call her, Rachel from accounts or Rachel from complaints or Rachel from the Japanese desk, whatever she was, whatever CV she chooses to bring out of the cupboard today, I think it's the worst budget I've ever seen. Yep. They clearly are. They're all economic chalk jockeys, and you know what a chalk jockey is. It's somebody who's never ridden a horse before, so his name's up in chalk. So these people have got no idea about running a business, a country, or any other form of economic unit. The budget, she talks about regulating for growth, which is an oxymoron. The economy is effectively collapsing. Our incoming is a sterling crisis. The bond vigilantes are now going to be holding us to ransom, quite correctly. Who would want to invest in a country where you take over, you raise the wages for all the public sector, you hammer the private sector with a £40 billion tax increase, and then you expect the economy to grow? I mean, it's sort of kindergarten stuff which is doomed to fail. And I had lunch at a bank today. I mean, London's losing its position as a centre of capital formation. It's lost out to America. Once you lose your position of a sort of liquidity-driven fundraising centre, it's very difficult to get it back, Jeremy. So I think she's got to make massive cuts in the public sector. As we know, there are more and more people in the public sector and they're less and less efficient. So it doesn't mean that there's less efficiency, but they've got to actually now, take the bull by the horns and actually cut these indolent civil servants out and start to bring some logic to the way in which these people are supposed to be serving the electorate. They are servants after all.
I mean, that's for me, that's a really interesting point, because, I mean, I've run a business too, not on your scale, but to me, to say to the private sector, forget your ideas, your creativity, creating jobs and success and wealth petering down. Now, we're going to hammer you, but we're going to give every single person who's part of a public sector that is bloated by anybody's standards and is not up to scratch, because most of them are working from home or they're suffering from anxiety so they can't go to work anymore. They go on and on about this 22 billion black hole and then give the train drivers and their buddies who got them there this ridiculous rise. Fiscally, I think they've been an absolute shambles. And frankly, when I look again at this country at the end of a week of doing this show and I think about rape gangs and I think about fiscally where we are and where we are in the world and all this, It's an absolute disgrace. And people... Somebody sent me a text last week. This will make you laugh. It said... Donald Trump gets voted in America and he says that I'm going to make the lives of Americans more prosperous. I'm going to make it safer. I'm going to make us be appreciated for the money that we spend on everybody else. Fair play to him. And then it said, can you imagine the uproar if we got somebody in this country like Nigel Farage to do the same? Absolutely, that's what we need, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, I mean, when a government minister looks you in the eye, which happened to me, and tells me that very often the state is more efficient than the private sector, at that point I sort of threw my hands up and walked out. I mean, if they honestly think that, Jeremy, we've got very little chance of succeeding. And ultimately, we've got the most entrepreneurial people. We've just got to cut away all of the fetters, all of the rules, the regulations, and all the unnecessary sort of rubbish that we get from all of these quangos that are unelected. And we've got to set the British people free. But in the meantime, you know, the currency will go on collapsing until we start to get some sensible policies which drive growth. And it's only through growth that we can solve the problems that we've got.
We can't
solve it if the economy doesn't grow.
No, the economy is screwed under this government. Where does it end with this government? Today we hear 500,000 people lying on hospital trolleys. No 999 calls being answered because the NHS, even at 200 billion plus, is apparently on its backside. I have very strong feelings about that. But something that actually Lord Vasey said just now to me was he doesn't think there's a plan. He doesn't think there's any foresight. It's almost day-to-day management and you know, beat it. It's a bit like whack-a-mole. It's just a ridiculous whack-a-mole politics where I'll deal with that, then I'll deal with that. I don't know if Starmer's got a plan. I don't feel like there's any ideology behind... Well, there is ideology, just no sort of practical knowledge of what to do to combat what's taking place, Rupert.
I think, Jeremy, and I've got some knowledge of the NHS. I mean, I'm on record as saying this before. The NHS is a fraud. Everybody's told it's free. It's not free. We all pay for it through our national insurance. It's a bit like our state pension is a fraud. I mean, it's a put-and-take pension scheme which relies on those people who are working to pay for those people who've retired. And that works fine when you've got more people working than retiring. But now the baby boomers are all retiring. The government knows they've got an actuarial issue, and ultimately it means those young people will be working a lot longer and probably ending up with a pension much later than the current generation. And equally with the NHS, most people are now actually not only paying their national insurance because of immigration and because of the pressures that are on the NHS, most people now are being forced to go private. That's why it's a fraud, because they're paying twice. And, you know, until the whole thing is disassembled and reassembled, and we actually prioritise frontline care, and we sort out all of these issues, and we get back to some proper sort of, you know, GP surgeries that function, and a population that isn't being boosted all the time by needless mass legal and illegal immigration, then we're going to go on struggling. And I don't see Wes Streeting, even though I think he is a man who's clearly driven to try and improve things. I think he'll find it incredibly difficult to do that.
Rupert, final question. Would a reform government ask the British people to pay for medical care in terms of improving the NHS?
Well, personally, I think we should be allowed to opt out of the NHS and have some form of, you know, scheme where we buy our own healthcare and take ourselves out of the NHS. There's a lot of ways in which you can actually solve the NHS. As we know, Jeremy, central planning never has and never will work. And what the NHS now is a centrally planned beast. It's like an animal on the back of productive Britain, and it's killing us. So somebody's got to grasp the nettle and sort it out. So personally, I think my view of life is not always the same as others. I want to empower people to take control of their own lives. I don't want a dependency culture, which effectively is what Gordon Brown tried to create, hoping that they'd always vote Labour.
You know what, my friend, I could damn well talk to you and forever. I'm so grateful. I know you're a busy man. You put the case so brilliantly. And Rupert, happy to be called Rupert as well, with me about the Christian name thing. Rupert Lowe, Reforms MP for Greater Yarmouth. drama. Thank you for being on Jeremy Carl's Drive Show. This is Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. What do you make it of all? A government who are going to cut public spending, raise taxes. He doesn't even know if Rachel from accounts will be his Chancellor in 6 months' time. We've got rape gangs across this country. We've got people lying on the floor in hospitals. We've got an immigration problem. It's all going... God, it's great to live here, isn't it? 0344 419 1000. Get me a vodka and tonic. I'm losing my mind. We're back in 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
To wake up my mate tomorrow at 6 a.m. My Graham's Morning Glory. Fantastic breakfast show. Give it a chance. 0344 419 1000. Talk is on. The home of common sense and free speech. To the phone lines. We'll go to Manchester. It's probably raining. John's on Talk Drive. You got 2 minutes, pal. What you got?
John, yeah, why does the word Muslim keep coming up? Because when Jimmy Savile got caught, it's you said we need to speak to a Muslim leader. You know, did you speak to a Christian leader at that time?
No, but there's a difference between Jimmy... Let's get this one thing straight. I am not, and never have been, somebody who's going to make accusations that aren't real. Let me take you to Rotherham. Let me take you to the police admitting, my friend, that it took them 8 years to bring those British Pakistani men to justice because the police, underline, admitted by them, were concerned it would cause tension culturally on the streets. My view is this. I don't care whether you're white, brown, I don't care about the colour of your skin. If you perpetrate such a disgusting, repugnant crime against an innocent child, you should suffer at the hands of the law like that. I don't care if you are a cabinet minister or somebody on the streets. I find the whole thing a disgraceful stain. But there is no doubt there is proof that many, many hundreds of these crimes have been committed by Muslim men. That's a fact. You can't get away from that by throwing Jimmy Savile at me.
By Christian men as well, you know.
I said that. What did I just say to you? What did I just say to you?
You don't mention Christians.
Sorry?
You don't mention Christians. But you never mention the word Christians.
I've been saying on this show for 3 weeks that anybody would... I just said it to you and you didn't listen. The colour of your skin. I don't matter about your creed or your religion. If you do that to an 8... Why has this been covered up for so long? Is that not more of a concern to you, John?
No, you're going off the track here. My point is, you should mention the word Christian as well. When
I have mentioned Christians, but you...
No, I listen to your show regular.
Yeah?
I listen to your show regular, and you mentioned Muslims
I
all the
covered...
time, then you do Christian.
John, let me tell you, I covered Hugh Edwards, that disgusting Christian. Well, he's not Christian if he abuses children or watches images of 7-year-olds being... Do not even get me there, my friend. I laid into Hugh Edwards. He should be sent to jail. Like all of those pedos should be sent to jail. But you have to accept that there are a large number of these crimes have been taken place in areas, and British Muslim men, British Pakistan, have been accused of it. And your answer to me should not be, you should mention Christians. Your answer to me should be like mine, which is, any person of any colour or any creed that does that is a disgusting disgrace and shouldn't be free, should they?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. But you know, you seem to be using the Muslims. You know, if a Muslim rapes somebody, he's not a Muslim. That's what I believe.
Quite right. And do you know what? I wish the Muslim leaders and people like you would come out and say that. We thank you for your call. It's 4:45. We're live across the UK. This is Talk Drive. That was John in Manchester. Now, the other big news story of the day, which is just one of those news stories that will go on, and we hear it every day, and it's one of those things like, are we going to keep talking about the NHS? Yes, we are. Hospitals left a record over 500,000 patients languishing on trolleys in A&E for 12 hours or more last year. Damning figures reveal. On the day we hear that ambulance crews are stuck at A&E departments, missing thousands of 999 calls. Here's a man who knows his stuff, former NHS Trust Chairman, Martin Gower. Welcome to Talk Drive. How are you, my friend?
I'm very well, thanks, Jeremy, and thanks for having me on.
This embarrasses me. This is another part of being British that does my head in. Can I give you a theory? And you were an NHS Trust Chairman. Would I be wrong or right to say that the NHS, when it was set up, was revered, quite rightly? The basis for it, you know, free at the point of whatever, is great. We have an older population, a larger population. We have an immigration problem. It's stretched to its heels, but I also know that too many people who don't pay into it are taking advantage. Do we need to knock it off a pedestal and start again because it doesn't work? And whenever you say that, Martin, just very quickly, people go, but it's not the nurses and the doctors. No, it's not. But the system needs changing, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, actually, that when the NHS was founded, it was really an economic issue that drove it, because we'd had World War II and we needed a fit and healthy workforce to rebuild the country. And that was one of the prime drivers of the NHS ever being formed. Today, it's something completely different. It's the 5th largest employer in the world, and it simply doesn't work. And without wishing to depress any of your listeners and viewers, I don't think it's ever going to work.
No, I agree.
For as long as it's in the hands of politicians, whatever their colour, I'm sorry, I can only say it's doomed.
And in terms of, I mean, you might have heard Ed Vaizey say earlier, and I'm completely with him on this, Blair started this to involve the private sector, but Ed made a very good point. If you pay your tax to be provided with that care, and then that care is so crap, excuse my French, that you have to pay privately, so you're paying twice, and yet we have people coming into this country, and this is a fact, and we don't want to upset anybody. I know for a fact that illegal immigrants in hotels have private GPs sent to those hotels to make sure they're okay. I know for a fact that illegal migrants who haven't even gone through the vetting system are having operations whilst people who have paid their stamp for years, Martin, are waiting. And that to me is morally wrong.
Jeremy, it's disgraceful. And it shouldn't be happening. But again, it's because we have a politically led system, which other countries don't have. I'm sorry, there is no other country in the world that's ever copied the NHS. And actually, the reality is that, I mean, I think the current Secretary of State, we've had 39 of them since the NHS was founded. Very few of them can you, and I know the history of most of them, very few of them can you put a star by them and say, do you know, he did a really great job. Very, very few. Maybe 2 or 3 out of the 39. But actually, the politically led system of healthcare doesn't work. What do politicians, always say, oh, we've got to reform the NHS. They never do, they never will, because the NHS as an organisation, as a system, doesn't work. Within days of my joining the NHS, there were people, when I joined as a non-executive director, there were people saying to me, you know, the clinicians are great. What really stinks is the system. And the system does stink. It doesn't work. At least, let me put one caveat on that. It doesn't work in a lot of places. There are some places where it does work. And where it does work is where clinicians and managers have got together, and they've got together with social care, other local services, and made it work, not because of the directives from any politicians, but because they've worked out what actually is needed for their community and their local patients.
Tell us, as an ex-NHS Trust chairman, in brief terms, what needs to happen? Because it always sort of becomes an argument between more money and less diversity and spend your money wiser. You were the man. What's the answer?
Well, the first thing I would do is sort out primary care. In other words, the GP-led services, because without doing that, we'll never sort anything else out. And what I mean by sort out, at the moment, we've actually increased the number of GPs significantly over the last 10 to 15 years. The trouble is, most GP practices, a high percentage of the GPs who work there are actually part-time. And they're doing all sorts of other stuff, putting a day a week in for a pharmaceutical company, doing aesthetic work, you know, giving people who want their face injected with stuff to, you know, they're doing that. They're doing all sorts of things. And really, this is the part-time thing doesn't work. I would charge for GPs. I would say £10 for a visit to a GP is perfectly justifiable, but I would also completely change the GP contract. The GP contract is based on how many people they have on their books. In theory, the less patients they ever saw, the better off they'd be. Now, we want GPs, primary care, to be based on activity. What are they actually doing? Not the fact that they've got 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 people on their books. That doesn't work at all. You've got a similar situation in dentistry, which is a co-payment system. So, but primary care doesn't work. It's not accessible. It's not available. And there are people turning up at A&E, this has gone on for years, by the way, who simply can't access a GP. I lived in a commuter belt once, and people used to see people who go with their briefcases into the local A&E because they couldn't contact a GP in London where they actually worked.
Martin, I have to tell you, you know this because we've spoken many times. You know the way this works. I would love to have more time. It is lovely to speak to somebody who's worked in it and doesn't, not disrespectfully, have it so far on a pedestal that he's not prepared to look. What a great suggestion by Martin Gower. What a fantastic suggestion. Instead of paying GPs to have £3,000 on their books, why not, like the rest of us, do not get paid by how successful you are? I.e., you stupid idiots, how many people you see. This is Talk Drive.
It's obviously a very horrid situation for everybody. There is some disquiet, is there not, at the very least, about the way that the authorities have handled all of this.
At the moment, I think people here are just in that panicked fight or flight mode. It really is. You're in the lap of the gods. Everybody's on edge. Nobody feels safe.
As you know, where I live is on fire right now. Literally, the entire city of the Pacific Palisades is burning.
Any message from you to Governor Newsom or Karen Bass tonight?
Spend less on hair gel. What can I say to them? Not big admirer of either.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. 5 to 5 calls in just a tick. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk Drive. Listen to this. Just talking to Martin Gow there, NHS Trust Chairman X, just saying, for God's sake, GPs get paid if they have thousands of people on their books, not how many people they see. Last week, says Alison, my 80-year-old auntie who has lung cancer and lives alone was told by the hospital to call an ambulance as she had blood clots in her lung. It took 4 hours for the ambulance to arrive. She was then sat in a chair for 16 hours, given pills and sent home, having had absolutely no tests or doctoral intervention. Completely unacceptable. Alison, I am so goddamn ashamed of this country sometimes. Hello to, I don't know, but she says, Jez, great show. As a nurse who's worked in a GP surgery, a hospital and for the ambulance and district nursing, 3 things would solve our problems. 24-hour GP opening hours alongside the pharmacy. Better pay for home carers to recruit and retain them so people do not get discharged so quickly. And separate emergency services for mental health patients comprising of teams of nurses, doctors and security people to free up the police. Could not agree more. Let's go to Milton Keynes. Amy, you've got 2 minutes, literally that, on Tour Drive. What you got?
Hey, so I follow the news quite a lot, but there's never really I never see the impact of what's been said in the news. But the other day, I went to my local GP surgery, and usually I try to avoid going to the NHS as much as possible, go to privately if I can. But anyway, so I ended up, and I was just looking around, looking at the posters, and there were 2 posters that I very rarely get crossed, but I got crossed at these 2 posters. I'm going to read them to you. So the first one, all are welcome. Your nationality or your immigration status do not affect your ability to register here. And the second, don't have any documents, don't worry. We might ask for your ID or proof of address, but if you don't have any, and you live in your local practice area, you can still register with us. So basically, you can come in from wherever, but you don't even have to have any documentation to be able to register to any GP if you're a safe surgery or whatever they're called, and you get onto the NHS system. So people like you or I, paying our taxes, you can come in from wherever.
Am I allowed to ask you how old you are?
27.
Yeah, refreshing. Can I just say, what I love about your call and what I love about this station, until they drag me out of here screaming and kicking, is the guy who phoned before. There's a text, isn't it? Paul Jones says, your Muslim caller is part of the problem in my mind and why the Muslim faith is getting such a bad name. He was more worried about his faith being dragged down than the poor white kids having their lives ruined. That is one point. Then we get to immigration. 5 years ago, if you mentioned immigration, you were called a racist. So we've got posters in NHS hospitals, according to Amy, saying it doesn't matter if you're an illegal and you've got no papers, come in. Now, on the one hand, the bedwetters, Amy, you'll go, that's how we should be. My point is, that's fine if you've looked after the people who have paid their stamp for 50 years and they're not on a trolley in a corridor with cancer or a broken leg getting absolutely nothing. It's disgusting. It's wrong.
Yeah. It's awful. I put it up on my Instagram because I was I was just outraged by it. And so many people came on and said exactly that. If you call it out, you get called a racist and this and that. But luckily, I think it's turning. People are changing their tune and they're just pointing out the obvious. It doesn't matter where you come from. It's just the obvious point. If you're not a British citizen, if you haven't gone through the ways of doing it, why should I or you have to pay for someone that's not worked. Or
you're 27 years of age, so you're half my age. There will be people listening to this, not many who will go, that's outrageous. These poor people are coming from war-torn countries. I'm 60 and I can tell you the only reason they come from France is because they get a bloody tent in France. When they come here, they get a 4-star hotel, and for your information, they probably get a GP sent to the hotel, whilst Alison's aunt has to lie on the floor for 16 hours.
It's awful. Well, my mum comes from Mexico, so I think I'm in a position where I can say, look, my mum's an immigrant. She's come over here, and also she's gone through the proper process of being able to call herself British. You know, it's. I think people are just let off quite easily off of.
I think the basis. I've thought that the cost of living crisis and COVID really accelerated people's minds to say this isn't fair. We're not against helping people, but if you can't help yourselves and those of your own who are paid in, then that's the problem. Really good to have you on, Amy. Thank you so much indeed, and tell your friends about Talk. All right.
Will do.
You're a star. Thank you so much, Amy and Milton Keynes. Look at the time. It's 5 o'clock. That's 1 hour down and 2 to go. Drive time is on. We continue with Isabelle Oakeshott, Talk's international editor. She's about as outspoken as me, more so. 0344 499 1000 is my telephone number. Text to 87222. Do please start your message with the word Talk. And we, my friends, I'm off for a wee. I'll be back in 3. The news of 5 is next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Second hour of Talk Drive for Monday. This is JK, live and exclusive till 7 on the home of free speech and common sense. Thank you for tuning in, because when you do, it gives me so much more time to work out what's coming next. If you'd like to be part of the attempt at the show, 0344 499 1000. So our telephone number, you can send a voice note to Lanky Ryan, a man who gets excited by oven gloves for Christmas. You can just make a call to Mia, into Jodie, who's stuck in Lapland. Don't ask me why. 0344 499 1000. Or you can text us 87222. Start your message with the word Talk. I've got to apologise to my TV wife. Kinsey Schofield says, my TV husband is dropping a lot of goddams today. Goddamn I am, Kins. I love you. We'll speak very soon. Thank you for tuning in. Jez says, Rich, great show. Problem with this and the last government is it's the same bloody civil service making cuts. So frontline public services are cut instead of the wasteful jobs and gold-plated final pension salaries of the blob. In Ireland, all civil servants took a pay cut and pension cut during the crash and only got it back when economy recovered and it got better. Thank you, Betty. Hello to Tad in Cambridge. Jez, I'm not averse to privatised medical treatment, but I have yet to hear anyone addressing the potential problems of cartels where prices are artificially inflated and pegged. It's not fair that unions hold us to ransom, but equally, clinicians' fees need to be kept under strict governance to ensure value for money. Hello to Tony Sheridan. Jenny? No, that'll be Jeremy. Brilliant. I actually now think I'm called Jenny. Hello, my name's Jenny Carr. Hi, Jenny. I'm joking. We love you and your show. One of the greatest presenters out there. Oh, who sent this? My mother's dead. But we have started taking bets in our household on how long into a show before you mention your age. We are also in our 60s. You're only as old as you think. Tony, I'm not 60 yet. It's July, but yes, it fills me full of fear. I'm quite worried. Chris Moore says, I'm 51 and I've never been into politics, but in the last year I've had to start following it because I can't believe this shower of really think we are that stupid not to see what they're doing. I find the whole thing unbelievable. I couldn't agree more. And Chris from Buckinghamshire, Jezza, what you did on your Instagram last Thursday teased me and hundreds of thousands of other people. Put us out of our misery. All right, Chris in Buckinghamshire, I'll put you out of your misery at 6 o'clock. I promise you. 5 past 5, 0344 419 1000. Let's go to Red Car. Ethan, or is it Ethan? It is Ethan. You're on Talk Drive. Good evening.
Yeah, it's Ethan.
How are you, Ethan?
I'm good, Jeremy. I'm good. Well, saying that, bad news for the area today, but that's separate news. We're ringing about not just our NHS that's broken, it's also our sexual health service that's broken. And over the last few years, we've seen rise in STI records, and at the moment now they're at record highs, and they've been at record highs every single year. Our governments, both governments, have not taken a clear enough stance on a plan of what they want to do. They've left it to our local authorities to fund, and something that we all know across the country is that our local authorities are quite underfunded as is, and this is one of the services that have just been left to rack and ruin.
I think many services, I think social care, I think in the community. I've spent time in the past filming with ambulance services who have had to deal with patients with severe mental... I've told the story many times on this show. I worked with an ambulance service for a weekend, and one particular night they picked up a man with mental problems and issues who'd knocked himself out with spice 5 times on a 12-hour shift, and you have to keep taking the ambulance. And then you hear the story of the woman, you know, with the broken hip of 80 waiting for the ambulance. I'm not one of those people, right, who closes their mind to many things, but I don't think that any business worth its salt, Ethan, right, will get 200+ billion, right, when we know about the extravagances, when we know about the red tape, when we know about the stuff that's going wrong, and not do something about it. I'm not saying, by the way, that just, you know, organising it, getting rid of all those ridiculous people is going to change it, but it would make the NHS more effective. But the other thing is, and people won't like this, is what Martin Gower said. I mean, you know, I'm afraid it's now available to everybody, even people who haven't paid into it. In fact, we heard from a girl who said there are posters in her local doctor's surgery saying even if you're an illegal, you're welcome to it. I don't think that's what it was set up for. I understand the sentiment about it's free at source, but now it's free to every bugger who wants anything and has given nothing. And apparently the people who are paid in, like 80-year-olds on the floor, are getting absolutely nothing. Ethan in Redcar, thank you very much indeed. Please keep the calls coming. 0344 419 1000. Karen's in Norfolk. All right. Why did I do that? The NHS should do like the Republic of Ireland. Those who work should have private insurance, and pensioners and young people get free health care. I lived in the Republic of Ireland for 11 years, and the health service over there works. I'm in Liverpool, right? They closed our hospital with 500 beds, opened a new one with 250 beds. Now they're screaming they have a national incident. What the hell is going on? Your thoughts on this? The NHS is always a bone of contention. Right, it's 8 minutes past 5. When you are in the presence of broadcasting royalty, OK? You can spend as much time waiting for them. That's on her rider. Isabelle Oakeshott should have been here 5 minutes ago, but we don't care because she is Royalty Talk's international editor, a woman I gave the flu to on the 20th of December. I'm still scared of her. Isabelle, good afternoon.
Yeah, you totally should be, because nearly 3 weeks on, I am finally better. That's how long it took. So, you know, maybe I was a few minutes late, but you cost me 3 weeks of my life. How about that?
So I will say this to you. I will say two things. I offered you the Chinese remedy medicine, which would have cured you because it cured me, although I drank too much on Saturday night. That's why my voice is dodgy, and started screaming at people. No, I wasn't. I was singing. The other thing is that we, in hindsight, could have spent Christmas together.
Well, it might have been more exciting than the Christmas I did have.
Mine was crap, mate.
Feeling miserable.
Before we start, can I just ask you a question that I've asked everybody, slightly different to what other presenters, and very unprofessional, I'm sure. Are you all right with me calling you Isabelle? Because the last thing I would want to do is offend you, because today a council has been criticised. This is the council in Sutton, in London, has been criticised for telling its staff not to ask people for their Christian names. They've said the question could be offensive. This has been described by many as hypersensitivity taken to ridiculous lengths. But I wouldn't want to call you Isabelle if you were offended. It caused anxiety, made you take 4 weeks off work. If you prefer me to call you Mrs. Oakeshott, I will.
Or you could call me Izzy. I mean,
all right, Izzy, let's get busy. Let's do... No, sorry, that was crap. Go on.
Is it the Christian bit that might cause offence? Say, what's your Christian name? I suppose that no one asks that anymore, do they?
No, they get no. Listen, mate, the whole world's gone mad. This is a good one to start with. You're always here on Breaking News Day, so earlier on, when Sir Drury Starmer was talking about AI and how AI is going to improve the world, that's my impression of his voice when he turned
actually quite good.
Turned the Christmas lights on. 5, 4, 3. No, I don't want the clip at all. He basically was asked by a journalist, will Rachel Reeves, actually I will Rachel Reeves be your Chancellor for the whole of this Parliament? This is what he said very quickly.
Will Rachel Reeves be your Chancellor at the next general election?
I'll be really clear. We're going to stick to the fiscal rules. That is a very important thing that we've said throughout. We set out those fiscal rules.
So basically, Isabelle, he couldn't say yes. So all the press jumped on it. Literally 3 minutes ago, Downing Street, who presumably think the Prime Minister's an idiot, have confirmed that Rachel Reeves will be Chancellor for the whole of this Parliament. They have said, following those questions, that put them in a difficult position. So let me get this right. We've got a Prime Minister who won't admit it. Now the machinery of government has said she will be, which means if she turns out to be as bloody useless as everybody knows she is, and he has to sack her, he'll then be made to look even more of an idiot. This government is a joke.
I mean, this is absolutely extraordinary. That is basically kind of, you know, politics 101. This is what the press always ask a Prime Minister when one of his cabinet ministers or even a junior minister is in trouble. They will basically say one of two things. Do you have full confidence in that minister? To which the only answer, if you do, is yes. And if you don't, then you can come up with a form of words, and that is the code to the media that basically that person's on their way out. Or you might be asked, is that person still going to be in their job, you know, by the time of whatever date anyone chooses to ask it?
Sure.
And he should be well enough trained to know what form of words to use in that situation. Instead, we got the usual,
That's a good impression as well.
While he played for time, you know, while that robot brain, I don't have much hope for AI if it's his level of robotics, stirred itself into action. And then he goes, what did he say? He's got, let's be very clear, which is always political.
We're going to stick to the fiscal responsibility of what we're doing.
The guy just cannot be like a normal person, never mind a proper politician. And he's now really made the worst possible form of answer, hasn't he? Because he's sort of said yes, but no, but. And then under pressure, his people have had to say, yes, she will. But the truth is, I think it's vanishingly unlikely she will. So then he's just going to look even more of a muppet when she inevitably is sacked. Unbelievable.
Before we get onto the serious subject of NHS, I feel like all of us, all 17 of us who listen and watch this programme, should join hands and take a breath, because some sad news today politically, Isabelle. And I feel we need to share this with people. Nicola Sturgeon, the Jimmy Cranky of politics, has announced that she's getting divorced from her husband, Peter Morell. This is the couple who are both being questioned at this precise moment in time. He's already been charged for embezzling money out of the SNP. She was thrown out in disgrace. She's also been questioned but hasn't been charged. And very surprisingly, because many of us in politics would have thought they had a rock-solid marriage, try and sound genuine, Jezza, they're getting divorced. Would you like to make a comment about that at all, Isabelle?
I make a number of comments about that. First of all, she's now going to be a tabloid newspaper case study. Because, as you know, I think it's the 6th of January, which is peak day for filing for divorce. So she's only missed that by a few days. And
is that the peak day? I never knew that.
Yeah, so it's basically the first Monday of the new year is when everyone decides, right, that's it. We staggered through Christmas. It was hell on earth. We couldn't split up before Christmas, but we'll wait until the new year. That's when people do it. So she's an absolute cliche on that front. And secondly, my goodness, the rumours around her private life have been swirling for a very long time. And I'm not going to get myself into hot water by elaborating on that. But it's actually, I would say, considerably more colourful than what is said about Sir Keir Starmer.
And it's really interesting. It's really interesting. And I've been waiting many months to say this. I was a Boris fan, and then I was upset with what happened. I watched that poisonous little woman try and outdo the government during COVID every single week, the pious nature of so many politicians. And when you strip her bare without, as you quite rightly say, being able to say anything, just go look in the mirror, Cranky, because I'm telling you now, it's unbelievable. And that's all we're saying. It's so very sad about the divorce. He's probably going to prison, allegedly. I don't know, he might be fined. She's probably going somewhere else with someone else. Anyway, let's move on. One of the biggest look at is, I wish you could see Isabelle's face if you're just listening on the radio. One of the things that I wanted to get our teeth into today, and I was just talking not longly enough to Martin Gower, NHS chairman, who's such a good guy to have on. Today we discovered that 500,000 people have laid on hospital trolleys for 12 hours or more in 2024. Ambulance crews by their hundreds are stuck at A&E, missing thousands of 999 calls a day, Isabelle. Ryan, who's the producer of this show, was telling me about it. Is he your great uncle? Yeah. 85, really ill, 12 hours on a floor. I mean, I get accused of all sorts of things. This is why I get so angry about immigration, because two things in my mind need to happen. One is we need to get the NHS off this bloody pedestal that we've put it on. I like the sentiment, but it doesn't work anymore. And we need to stop giving help and treatment to people who've not paid a penny or don't deserve it, and making other people suffer who do deserve it, right?
Completely. And actually, I have just put on X a slightly broader version of that sentiment. I've said, look, you know, we know that our catastrophe chancellor is saying that she's going to be making more savings. You know, today is the day that Downing Street decided to thrill us all with their agenda for cutting waste in government, as if no one's heard that before. Yeah. I think the simplest way to do that would be to, you might give a little bit of notice if you're feeling kind, but to say that basically from now on, no recent immigrants are entitled to any benefits at all. So if you come to this country and you've not paid anything in and you're not working, but even if you are working, there's got to be a period of time before you qualify for any state benefits. There's nothing that there shouldn't be anything that controversial about that. Try and find me many countries where you can just saunter in and immediately get free money.
And this is the point, and this is why I don't understand politics, and I'd be no good at it, because I mean, all the leftists will say that's racist. No, it's not. What it is it's saying very simply to people who have worked hard, who haven't broken the law, who haven't they've not had a handout. They've had nothing. The very basis of what they're promised for living their lives correctly, they are not getting, because other people who are taking advantage and taking the pee out of this country are being put. You know as well as I do There are private GPs going to taxpayer-funded four-star hotels to make sure immigrants are OK. Now, as I say, the bed whistles will go, but it's been tortuous for them. What, on a tent in France? Try telling that to people north of Watford Gap who are struggling to feed their kids, and they'll say to me, but Jez, you don't understand. These people are escaping war zone areas. Yes, some, but not the majority, as you lot like to point out. The majority come here because we're a soft bleeding touch, aren't we? Isn't that the truth?
We've actually got to the point where we're advertising the free healthcare to immigrants, and watch out for Kev's show tonight. I'll be talking about that with him.
Did you hear the call just now from the girl? 27. She said, I never thought I'd phone this station. She said, I'm in my doctor's surgery the other day. There's a poster up saying, even if you're illegal and have no papers, we'll make sure you're OK. Poster. Put it on Facebook.
It's just absolutely ridiculous. And I'll tell you very quickly, a friend of mine has just recently been diagnosed with cancer. And she's lucky enough to have private healthcare, but she started out on the NHS route because she wanted to use the NHS if possible. And she very quickly gave up because the delays were so ridiculous. She's already had her surgery and is ready to go to the next stage of the treatment. I think she's just been contacted by the NHS about an appointment sometime in the future to discuss the possibility of surgery.
And she's already had it.
She's already had it. You know, she's on to the next stage of the treatment. This is why our cancer outcomes, one of the many prime reasons our cancer outcomes in the UK are so poor. It's not because we don't have brilliant clinicians. It's because there's far too great a wait from even to get your diagnosis. And then each of the stages is just far too prolonged. So, you know, there's a real impact on our own people of this attempt to make it the international health service, not the health service.
And what do you say to the people who would say that you and I are racist for saying that these people deserve it? What would you say to that?
Nothing to do with race at all. It's got to do with whatever colour your skin is, wherever you're from. It is to do with how long you've been here and what you've paid into the system. What I would say is come back to me with examples of countries that do what we do, and you will find that there are literally none that do everything that we do for anyone who comes in with no questions.
And there's nobody in authority, Izzy, you said I could quit. Has nobody gone, hold on a second, that's why we're screwed? When you say, here's a system that will offer free medical care, if you like, at the point of, to everybody, if you then have a much larger population, yes, an older one, I'll accept that, but a larger population because your borders are open and people are streaming into this country because, look, we'll give them this and give them that. Has nobody gone, hold on a minute, if we stop that, everybody else is going to be better off? Why are our politicians afraid of the truth?
I don't get it. You know, I tell you, not all politicians are afraid of the truth, and if we elect the right people, we'll get these types of policy. I could just put it that way.
I think that's very true. Talking of reform, Nigel Farage has today or over the weekend accused Wes Streeting of covering up the truth about grooming gangs. We didn't get a chance to do this last week. Very quickly from me, you're a mother, I'm a father. I think this must go higher and deeper than any of us can possibly imagine, because I don't care what your political persuasion is. The fact that this has been pushed wherever it's been pushed is a national disgrace to me, and I have no, whether it's an inquiry, whether it's people ending up in prison, I don't care if it's the highest to the lowest. This is an absolute stain on the United Kingdom, these rape gangs, aren't they?
It really is, and what is so frightening is the suggestion from multiple sources that this is still going on, and I just can't understand the mentality of anyone who knew this was happening to any young person, or of course any person of any age, but particularly any young children or teenage girls, how they could not do everything in their power to protect those girls and make sure that they were removed from.
But it's become a debate. I had a call from a Muslim guy. I said, "Oh, you talk about is Muslims?" I said, "No, I don't. I don't care what the colour, creed, religious. I don't care. This is so morally repugnant that whoever it is done." And frighteningly, this has been going on for 20 years, Isabelle. So this has been covered up by many, many different people, be they, I don't know, community leaders, social workers, local police, national police, politicians at the highest or the I don't know. But you know what? I said to somebody, if you looked at our country now and you looked at that, I'm embarrassed, man. It's beyond me. Beyond me.
You're right to be embarrassed, because I can tell you I travel a lot and people overseas are talking about Britain in very embarrassing terms for us. They see what's happening. These headlines are going all around the world, not just about this, but about our channel migrant problem and every other problem we've got. And honestly, people say what's happened to your country is so sad. That's the kind of language they're using. What has happened to Britain? You've lost yourselves. And it's so horrible to hear that, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We really seem to have lost our way on this stuff. I heard a woman that Ian Collins was interviewing earlier on this afternoon trying to claim that this debate was all about denigrating a whole community and it was all about anti-Islam. It's nothing of the sort. It is just a fact that those offenders were predominantly Pakistani.
It's also a fact that the police came out and said, and I quote, "It took us 8 years because we were worried about creating cultural division." And where I come from and you come from, if you break the law so heinously, by the way, by raping young innocent children, you should feel the full threat of the law, irrespective of the colour of your skin, right?
Yeah, or your cultural origin. I really don't care. I don't care if coming after these people raises some kind of cultural tensions. You come after these people because they've committed terrible crimes.
Because they're rapists.
And people like that caller to Ian Collins' show, when it was an interviewee, are part of the problem. They are precisely why we are where we are. This bleating about racism and, causing cultural tensions and denigrating religion, that's nothing to do with it. And it's people like that actually share a significant responsibility for what's happened.
You're a legend. I know you're on with Kev later. We're allowed to call her Isabelle because she's as hard as us. 7:20. No, it's 5:25. I've got the time wrong. Ryan's in here. We've got to go to an ad break. We've got to go to an ad break. He's had a haircut, by the way. Ryan's had a haircut. We'll put a picture up in a minute. It's ridiculous. Coming back in 3.
Of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, and Gavin Newsom share the lion's share of that blame because, as you mentioned, the water reservoirs were not filled. They have literally let billions of gallons of water, rainwater, and snow runoff flow into the Pacific Ocean rather than be retained to fill water reservoirs that could be used to fight fires. People ask me sometimes, Julia, what is the definition of liberalism? Well, the best definition we can see right now is that in Los Angeles, they had dozens of genders of firefighters.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
About 5:28. Rob, we'll get you on, I promise you, in the next half an hour. By the way, if you want to be on, 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. People say, you do take the mickey out of Ryan. Ryan is the driest, most amazing human I've ever met. We're talking about a new show, and I said you could just stand on stage. You could be a human coat rack, and he's excited. That's how excited he gets. 0344 499 1000. Mia's on the phone. She can text 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Do you remember Zippy off Rainbow? Oh, Jeffrey. I don't know why I did that. Our Supreme Leader sounds really similar. Anna, in Surrey, I agree, although Starmer's a bit like... Did you see, honest to God, to this day, people, when he did that firework countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2... 1. Whoa. He is about as exciting as No, I didn't say that. 03... Sorry, you don't need to cut it. 0344 499 1000. Right. One of the big news stories at the weekend, obviously, the appalling, tragic scenes from LA, the fires, and they're now talking about arsonists. They're talking about how the mayor and the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, have cut budgets, and there's also people are losing their houses. And I've read all that rubbish about, oh, you're a celebrity, you can afford it. I thought Mel Gibson put it straight when he said you can't get back priceless stuff that you've gathered in your life, whoever you are. The reason I've got the amazing Robert Jobson is that you can just imagine in the middle of that trauma who tried to take advantage. The Royal Editor himself, Mr. Jobson. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Very well, Jeremy. Very well indeed.
I'm going to call you Mr. Jobson. I'm going to start slightly differently because I didn't want to offend you, because a council today has been criticised in Sutton in South London, Mr. Jobson, for telling its staff not to ask people their Christian name. It says this could be offensive, but they have been called hypersensitivity to ridiculous things. So we don't want you to get anxious or sue us, so we need to ask if you're all right with Mr. Jobson, or you're OK with Robert.
I'm fine with most things, Jeremy, so whatever you want to call me.
All right, you old bugger. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Very good. Very good.
Justine Bateman, an actress, came out today. This is because Meghan bleeding Markle and Harry, the dreary couple of miserable people who didn't want to be royals, went to America, then got very upset that nobody wanted to do, and then sold secrets, and then they got no viewers or listeners, so they got axed. She labelled them disaster tourists as they volunteered with a camera crew to go out during the LA wildfires and give out meals, and there's her sort of wiping her head, you know, and looking pained, which is fine, but Ryan made a fantastic point. If that was Kate, and there have been examples over here of quite high-profile situations, people who have suffered, you do it privately. You don't shout it from the rooftops. When all of us saw those pictures, many of us saw Meghan and Harry playing on the front line, you think you're cynically using that for your own ends. Am I being harsh or truthful?
I think they're just a bit deluded as to who they are. I mean, you know, let's be honest, the royals, sometimes a lot of people would think, well, even when the royal family go out to that flood areas, there are a number of people would say, oh my, you know, we don't want you here. It's just causing a lot of mayhem. And sometimes that doesn't look good. But I think that they handle it quite well. And I think certainly Kate, when she's gone to a situation, who's gone it mostly privately. Look, this is the couple that didn't want to be doing all this stuff. They didn't want to be royals. They insist on keeping the name the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, whatever use that is in LA. I don't know, unless you're, you know, why would you really want to do it? But then to start being royals, I mean, it's like doing these things, going out and helping and saying, what can we do? We're going to open our home up to people. Well, let's see if that actually happens. But I just thought this was just another opportunity to get in front of the cameras. And I think a lot of people in America are getting quite ground off by it, actually, and not so much. It used to just be over here, but I think people are thinking this is a little bit cynical, and it's a little bit obviously trying to get a photo opportunity to their advantage. Others might say, you know, oh well, at least they're trying to help, they're trying to do their bit.
Yes, but you do it. You do. This is. You're so privately, right, pal. You're so absolutely spot on, because of the things that have come before, because of how it seems to be, we don't want anything to do with this dreadful organisation, but we're going to use that to get a deal. We don't want publicity because it intrudes on us and causes problems, but we're going to use it for our own ends when we want to launch a cookery service or bloody jam or something.
Well, it always seems to coincide with something they're launching.
I mean, and interestingly, she had a Netflix series. What was that about, jam or something? What was the latest Netflix series?
How to cook a cake or whatever. It was pretty pathetic, but the fact that they've got to try to fulfill their obligations. You know,
yeah. And then she says it's not the right moment to release it. Not because it's a load of old whatever, but because of respect to the victims, and I'm out there serving food, and it just...
Well, it would have been ridiculous, wouldn't it? It would have been a ridiculous time. But, you know, what Mel Gibson said is absolutely right. I remember there were floods, I think, in Guernsey once, and, you know, Alan Wicker, I think, lost everything he had. You know, that great guy for broadcasting, all his memories. And so it doesn't matter who you are. No. And I think that by doing what they're doing, I think people will look at this again saying, look, guys, you know, just be quiet just for 5 minutes. You know, you're not royal anymore. Yeah. You're not anything you don't want to be. You want the titles. You want your children to be prince and princess. You want to be seen as doing royal tours to Africa when you're not a royal. Yeah, at the same time, you want it both ways. And I think that's always been their problem. They started off when they were in the royal family doing a pretty good job. I think things are changing though, Jeremy. I mean, I'm doing another book at the moment called The Windsor Files, following up the Catherine. And I do think we're at a change at this moment in time where monarchy has got to have a good look at itself, not just the Harry and Meghan scenario, but the whole picture has got to have a good look at itself and say, where are we going? Are we going to be relevant in 50 years' time if we continue doing the same things, dressing up in the old regalia, doing the things we're doing? And I feel there is a need for a bit of a complete reboot.
Well, I'll be really outspoken because you know what I feel about the royal family after the old man and what he did. I think that Kate Middleton will save the royal family. I've always felt that Kate Middleton.
Well, no
I think it was the greatest thing in the world when, don't take this the wrong way, people listening, right, and watching, when a commoner, because that is in essence what she would have been perceived by the courtiers in times gone by, was not only allowed to marry, but has had the most astonishing impact on all of them and everybody. And I think her husband adores her. I think she and her husband will save it. She and her husband will save it.
And I think they will, because they're doing it in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think that's certainly, you know, I'm just talking about some of the old stuff, you know, the dressing up and this.
Yeah, but think about this, Robert. Think about this, right? If my old man was alive today, I can guarantee when William went out with that stubble, that beard, the first time he'd have gone, my God, what's happened? No, I'm being serious.
No,
even a little thing like that, right?
And I think that, you know, when your old man worked for the Queen Mother, I think there's a clear correlation between the Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and the Queen Mother, because the Queen Mother, remember that the King, George V, brought in, he changed it. You don't have to marry German princesses because if they changed the name to Windsor. And you can marry aristocrats. Well, that's what George VI did. He married an aristocrat. She wasn't a commoner, but she wasn't a royal princess from Germany. So therefore, in a way, in a modern way, Catherine is that same, is like that. And I think, like the Queen Mother saved the monarchy after the abdication crisis by supporting George VI, I think that Catherine, like you, will play a very similar role in taking the monarchy forward, and also the way that she educates her children and where her children come from. And after all, you know, on one side you've got royalty, the Queen Mother and the Queen and everything. On the other side, on Catherine's side, Catherine's grandfather was a painter and decorator.
And you know the really
interesting,
ladder,
you know?
Mate, I agree. The kids went to the same school as mine. I will say this to you, and the way it doesn't always work like this, but what you said at the beginning, we can say at the end. Meghan Markle and Harry, to me, when I saw those pictures of them, you know, volunteering after the fires, a few people would go there, but I think Justine Bateman's got it right. They're disaster tourists. They're trying to get some stuff. Catherine would instinctively have known, right? This is what I think, that was the wrong thing to do and would have done it privately without expecting to be heralded it. That is the significant difference, and that is why, in my mind, she and William will take it on and they will change it and they will modernise it and they will save it. $1 million.
Well, I believe that is the case too, and I think you're right, and I think that you're absolutely right in pinpointing Catherine, because, you know, the book I did on Catherine has been a big success because of who she is. I mean, you know, trying to find out the human behind this quite a bit of an enigma, really. And I think that what we've seen since her diagnosis, and the way that she handled that, by the way, I think has been tremendous, and I think that she will be a great asset. But no, the Meghan and Harry thing, they seem to desperately want to cling on to what they once had or experienced for a little while. Harry more than Meghan, but they did get adoration when I went around Australia and all the islands, and even in South Africa. They got a great reception. They seem to now realise that they may well have got it wrong.
There you go. I think they have, and I think you get it right. Thank you so much indeed. Robert Jobson, former royal editor, a new book coming out. Look out for that, The Windsor Files. We'll keep you updated, 22 minutes to 6. If you want to be on drive time, you know what to do. 0344 499 1000. Coming back in 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
20 minutes to 6. Welcome back. This is Talk, Drive on the Home of Common Sense and Free Speech. We're here until 7 o'clock if you want to be on. 0344 499 1000. We'll go to the Scottish borders. I don't know why I've done that impression. That was useless. Nigel, you're on Talk. Good evening. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hello, Jeremy. I'm fine. Just thinking about the NHS.
Yes.
What you were saying, and that poor lady whose aunt with cancer was left for 16 hours in a corridor or on the floor or whatever it was. The problem we've got is that politicians don't understand. I can remember listening to David Cameron years ago saying how wonderful the NHS was and how wonderfully it treated his disabled son. If a politician goes to the NHS, they'll get preferential treatment. There's no doubt about it. They're just not getting the same treatment that we're getting, and therefore they believe something is good that is actually failing.
Can I jump in and say that I don't disagree with that, but I think the problem is that we have held the NHS on this pedestal quite rightly initially, but it's almost now not fit for purpose, and it almost seems if you say that it's almost devil-like conversation. I mean, people will say, and I've already had texts, you're criticising the NHS, but the thing is just doctors are amazing and nurses are amazing. Yeah, they are. But the system don't bloody work, and it doesn't work because it was set up to help people who have paid their bit. We are taxed for this, right? That's the truth, OK, like council tax, but in other ways. Unfortunately, the NHS is stretched to its backside. I believe they've made a lot of decisions wrong in terms of what they spend stuff on, but people are getting the help. Some of people will think that's right. I think you need to pay into something to get it right. There isn't another country in the world. She's absolutely right. What Isabelle Oakeshott said, there isn't a country in the world you'd go to, have an accident, get sick and get free medical treatment. It just wouldn't happen.
No, it doesn't.
It just wouldn't. Thank you, Nigel and the Ballers. Let's go to Essex. Who have we got? Jay's in Essex. Jay, you're on Tour Drive. What you got?
Oh, hi, Jeremy. The stories are disgusting and they need to do something now. Stop talking about it and do it. With COVID, with the Nightingale hospitals, the Army put them up over a weekend, basically. So if all these older people that are fit medically to be discharged but can't because there's no package for them, can't they be put in? They don't need doctors and nurses monitoring them. They just need somewhere to go where someone's going to keep an eye on them.
I think the whole... listen, I've said it before. I think social care is fundamentally one of the biggest problems of the NHS. I've talked repeatedly. I mean, the old man was in a care home. We seem to not be able to sort out the correlation, do we? I mean, today we're hearing that ambulances... Have you heard these? I mean, ambulances are sitting outside hospitals in their tens, in their hundreds, because of bed blocking, right? And as a result of that... 999 calls aren't being answered. I mean, I've told this story many, many times. We seem to think that the NHS is just there to take advantage. I told this story, forgive me if you've heard it, but it was 10 years ago. I worked with an ambulance service. I worked on a 12-hour shift. The most appalling call was a woman who got completely bladdered, and I mean that at a Christmas party, 50, in the ambulance, abusing the staff, threw up, had to take her to hospital. She has to have a bed for 8 hours because if you release her before she sobers up, she's abusing the staff. It takes them an hour to clean up the ambulance. By the time they got back on, that was 3 hours. I wrote an article in The Sun a week later and got lambasted for it. I charge her the cost for that ambulance because some poor old bird who's broken her leg or some bloke who's stuck wherever isn't being picked up, but that drunk woman is, and that's costing us. It's the same, I'm afraid, as people coming to this country and getting the help that they haven't paid for. It's not right.
None of it works, but they're not joining the dots together, are they?
No.
If they could get the older people that are medically fit out into Nightingale hospitals, where all they'd need is sort of St John's ambulance people who are keeping an eye on them because they're medically fit. That would leave all the beds for the people that need them. They should sack whoever did those posters that lady phoned in about earlier and put it in all the doctors' surgeries. They need a rocket up their bum to do something now and just stop withering about it, and in 5 years' time you'll feel the benefit. We'll all be bloody dead by then.
Well, I couldn't agree more. Not that you'll be bloody dead. You're not. What? You know? How old are you?
68.
What's being 60 like?
Pretty grim, actually.
Thanks, mate. You've really made me look forward to this year. Thanks for that.
All of a sudden, it catches up on you, Jeremy, you know?
Thanks, mate. I might need a bath chair. You're very kind. Jay, in Essex, we appreciate it. Let's go to London. Chris, you're on Talk Drive. What you got?
Hi, Jose. It's not bad, mate. I'm 63. And my girlfriend's 38, so life's good.
Well, I'm 60 this year and my wife's 41, so there you go. Go on.
It's all good. Age is but a number. Growing old is obligatory, but growing up is a choice.
It's true.
Right, another thing. Have you got a seatbelt on that chair of yours?
Have I got a what?
A seatbelt.
A seatbelt on my chair?
Yeah, because you're going to be livid.
Oh, God. Go on, then.
2002.
Yeah.
Labour MP Nazir Ahmed.
Yeah.
Prosecuted, found guilty of raping a boy of 9 years old in Rochdale.
Mm-hmm.
Sentenced to 3.5 years.
He's gone. That's a shame. 0344 499 1000. That happens. I apologise. I don't know what that was about. He was telling a story. By the way, I have to say thank you for your response to that call the other day from the gentleman. It was Jack in Lancashire talking about how his daughter had been a victim of grooming gangs and he'd reported it to the police and nothing had been done. That just gathered so much response on social media. Hello to Paul Dobson, by the way. Jez, the privatisation of the NHS is essential, but we should privatise vertically, not horizontally. Example, in Japan, maternity is a private service. No state involvement. It's expensive, but having a child is regarded as a choice, not an illness. NHS should look at itself. Very interesting. Scotty or Adam Scott, the golfer. I've had people call me racist because I feel that illegal immigration needs sorting out. I'm frustrated that legal migrants get treated more fairly than British people who pay their dues. It's simply not right nor fair, Jez. I want to see more people open their eyes to what is happening in this country instead of it being quick to be shouted down. Hello to Mark Hill. Quite astounding how Sir Keir Starmer completely ignored the question about Rachel Reeves and answered a different question entirely. This is when he was asked earlier, don't know if you've heard the news today, will Rachel Reeves be the Chancellor for the rest of your premiership? But he completely ignored it to the point where an hour ago Downing Street had to say, yes, she will be. Why am I doing a Downing Street impression of him? What does that tell you? Local doctors say, oh, check this. This will make you laugh. This will send you, right, ready, you lot? Local doctor's surgery in Anglesey, 3 doctors, 1 nurse, 1 attached nurse, 2 attached healthcare visitors, and ready for it, my friends, 16 receptionists. This caller says, why are so many receptionists needed? Surely this is a waste of money and also very difficult to get past them when you need an appointment. One local lady denied an appointment even though she's having chemo, being told by the receptionist, go straight to hospital. It's not our problem. 0344 419 1000. This is Talk Drive.
Things are going on, we know it, we're not allowed to talk about it, the authorities won't let you. That is what is so corrosive to the kind of social capital that generates the stuff in the first place. We have to be honest. Of course, you know, we shouldn't engage in kind of, you know, sort of aggressive language against minority communities not, here. Yeah. Most people in the Pakistani community are not abusing their children, and we shouldn't drift into that. At the same time, there is an issue.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. 9 minutes. See, I thought there was going to be music there. 9 minutes to 6. This is JK on Drive. Push the sports button, please, Ames.
Sport Summary on Talk.
We say a very good evening, first time of the week, to my illegitimate son, Samuel Ellard. Hello.
Hi, happy Monday, how are you?
Well, I'm trying to eat a piece of birthday cake from young Abby. It's her birthday in the office. A little bit of chocolate cake, so that's stuck around my teeth. Can I just be respectful to you to start with today, Mr. Ellard? A council in Sutton has been criticised for telling its staff not to ask people their Christian name because it can be offensive, cause anxiety and upset people. This has been slammed as hypersensitivity taken to ridiculous things, but we felt on the show that we should be respectful. We're asking every guest, do you want to be called Mr. Ellard or is Sam okay with you?
No, when I was on TalkSport Breakfast, they called me Super Sam. I was known as Super Sam. Here's Super Sam. That was with Laura Woods and Annie McCoy.
Surely if you were still on Breakfast, you would still be Super, but you're not on Breakfast anymore, are you?
No, things changed around about 18 months ago.
So I can think of another word beginning with S that would describe you.
Like what? Stupid? Celibate?
Stupid, subservient, sacked.
I don't know. What does subservient mean?
Oh, never mind. Doesn't matter.
You know what? Just call me Sam, honestly. I'll call you JK, you call me Sam.
All right, I'll call you SE. Right, Sammy, listen, on a serious note, I'm a little bit cynical, as you know. We're going to start...
the most cynical human being I've ever met in my life.
Your mother didn't say that. Did you just say it was the most cynical human being you've ever met in your life?
You're very cynical. I mean, come on.
Right. All right, let's do this differently. I'll be the sports person, you do it. What's your reaction, Sam, to Tyson Fury retiring? He retired in 2022. A lot of people, not me, are saying this is to just raise the price of the money that he gets from Anthony Joshua.
You know what? I'm going to take that back and say you've got every single right to be cynical here. Because, yes, you are correct, Jeremy. We learned a couple of hours ago that officially... at the moment, Tyson Fury has announced his time.
Should we show the clip? Should we show the clip? This is Tyson Fury on his Instagram earlier. Have a listen.
Hi everybody, I'm going to make this short and sweet. I'd like to announce my retirement from boxing. It's been a blast. I've loved every single minute of it, and I'm going to end with this. Dick Turpin wore a mask. God bless everybody. See you on the other side. Get up!
What did he say at the end, Sam?
Get up! Does it get up very loudly? I'm not sure.
Dick
Jeremy,
Turpin took from the rich to give to the poor. Is he giving away his entire fortune?
I don't think so.
No.
But no, you're right to be cynical. I think my maths isn't my strong point, but I think this is the fourth time that throughout his career, and obviously there's been different reasons throughout the stage of his career that he has retired. I would say that when he was at his peak, Joshua was at his peak, whether it's now, when they're both not at their peak, I've always thought that Fury Joshua is the biggest fight we could put on in this country. And even though they're both not at the top of the game at the moment and on top of the heavyweight division, I still think, in fact, I'm certain that this is a fight that everyone in this country wants to see. There is no way they both retire without this fight happening. So be cynical in this case, because I still think we get Fury Joshua.
You are one of the most cynical sports reporters I've ever met in my life. Let's talk about the FA Cup third-round reaction. I mean, Spurs, Levine, I was crying with laughter. Tamworth, right? Read a really interesting article by Oliver Holt in the Mail this morning. Tamworth, I mean, took Spurs to 90 minutes, got them all the way through, got beaten in extra time as they tired. But in years gone by, a club like Tamworth would have got, you know, a really impressive replay at White Hart Lane, would have earned thousands of pounds, and that would have been so good for the club. It's a bit of a shame, actually, isn't it? I know about speeding up games, but a club like Tamworth missed out.
Yeah, 100%. I think when the FA Cup replays got scrapped, lots of people are unhappy and angry about it, and I was one of them. I think it's part of the competition, as part of its history, and you know, getting a replay for a team like Tamworth, for the players to go and experience Tottenham Hotspur Stadium probably will be once in a lifetime. But also, most importantly, the revenue they would get from the game, from the TV rights. It honestly, one game, it means so much to these football clubs. But replays got scrapped. For me, I'm a little bit. I don't like too much change in football, and I think replays was a part of the FA Cup, part of its history, part of its heritage. And you know, Tamworth, little old Tamworth, going to Tottenham, going to their massive stadium, it would have been special. So
that's two things that you've agreed with me on, but before you would have said I was cynical about. Yeah, let's try a third. Manchester United, under Ruben Amorim, a draw last week, well, they beat Arsenal on penalties yesterday in the FA Cup. The goalie was impressive. I just thought that Arsenal battered them but didn't win. I loved that. I didn't know who to hate more, Arsenal or Manchester United, but I loved it. And in 9 days, Arsenal's season's on its Arsenal, isn't it?
Yeah, sort of game where you kind of want both teams to lose, don't you? Yeah, I mean, if that game got played 100 times again, I think Arsenal would win 99 of them because they absolutely hammered them. But it felt like that was another example where you're watching a game thinking Arsenal are actually playing quite well here, creating chances, dominating the game, but yet they got no centre forward to put the ball in the back of the net. You know, Kai Havertz, I think, has come in. He's done a decent job. Kai Havertz will be the sort of player who's a decent backup option. Arsenal have got a really, really good team, and I still absolutely maintain that Mikel Arteta is the right man to take them forward. He's done a really good job there, but they have to go out, and it's been well documented now. It's not a new opinion that they need a world-class number 9 in that team. They had a world-class number 9.
So you're quite cynical at the moment about Arsenal not having a second striker, yeah?
Well, no, not second striker. They need a
So you'd be quite cynical about the fact they've done nothing to buy a second striker or a main man, yeah? You'd be quite cynical about that, yeah?
I'm cynical. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, but I mean, you've gone against that. Most people would say, oh, it's great, poor them. But so you're cynical about Tyson. You can see where I'm going here. You're cynical about Tyson Fury retiring. You think that that's, like me, a pile of horse poo.
Yeah, I think that
You're cynical about the fact that replays have been cancelled in the FA Cup and teams like Tamworth would have got a windfall and they're not going to. And you're rather cynical about that Arteta's still saying, I don't need a centre-forward, when patently in the space of 9 days, he's lost the chance to win the Premier League. He isn't going to win the FA Cup. He certainly isn't going to win the Champions League, so it's a massive problem for him. So actually, we are as one as your mother always believed.
Yeah, maybe I am your illegitimate son after all.
Yeah. I'm going to shock you now. Australian Open tennis, you've got a minute. Are we interested, really? Jack Draper, he's England number 1, he won.
Well, for 50 seconds, I'll tell you some of the highlights and then you can tell me you don't care. But Novak Djokovic came from a set down to win his opening round game. And, of course, there's Novak Djokovic on the court and in his corner, Andy Murray. I think this is amazing. I think it's, Andy Murray, we know he's retired and he's his first job post-playing tennis.
Don't be cynical. I'll tell you one thing I read. Emma Raducanu, apparently, no, she hasn't tripped over on the way to the court. She's covered in ant bites and she won't put any medication on them for fear of losing a drugs test or something. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I didn't know that, to be fair, but what I do know is she's in action tomorrow with Cameron Norrie.
She'll lose.
Honestly, if Emma Raducanu loses or pulls out, I'm not coming on this show, Jeremy, because I know you're very cynical about Raducanu, aren't you? Jodie Burridge, she's through, well done to her. And Jack Draper, British number 1, didn't play particularly well, but he avoided a shock. He's into the second round. He got to the semi to the US Open a few months ago. So some Brits are alive and kicking and doing well, including Andy Murray. In a different capacity.
You're a legend. We look forward to you coming back tomorrow. The cynical Samuel Ellard on Talk Drive tomorrow. We have the news at 6. That's next, and 1 more hour of drive time. We're coming back in 3.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, hour 3 of Drive for Monday. This is Talk, of course, the home of free speech and common sense, the place where you can come and have your say without fear or favour. Honest to God, so much to talk about. So many people trying to get on. 0344 499 1000 is my telephone number. You can text, well, it's not mine, let's be honest, it's not mine at all. Stations. You can text 87222, start your message with the word talk. I'm just looking at a message from Barry. Evening, Jez. Visited a major hospital at the weekend, and the staff car parks are virtually empty. The shift system needs changing. This hysterical excuse of a right to a life at weekends is ridiculous. Barry's not happy. Many stories about the NHS. Now, we have a guest this hour, but I need to just make sure that he's being treated respectfully. I don't want him to get anxious. I don't want him to end up, out of work. We say a very good evening to Mr. Gullis, former Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party. Mr. Gullis, good evening.
Hey Jeremy, how are you doing, buddy?
Well, I didn't want to use your first name to start with, Mr. Gullis, because I don't know if you've read the story today. A council in London, this is Sutton Council, has been heavily criticised, thank Christ. Can I say Christ? Well, I have done, because they've said that if their staff ask for your Christian name, that could be offensive and cause anxiety. Most of us think this is hypersensitivity taken to ridiculous lengths, but I need to respect you, Mr. Gullis, so are you happy to be called Jonathan, or is Mr. Gullis what you require?
I'd rather Jonathan, Jeremy, although even Jonathan would be politer than what most people sometimes on X would call me.
Yeah, absolutely. The JG to me, JG forever, but what a load, let's start with that. What a load of old crap, isn't it, mate? What's going on?
It's just exhausting, isn't it? Like, I'm just so bored of nonsense like this even being pursued in any of our public sector. The private sector's got some guilty heads for doing this, but it's always in the public sector the woke nonsense prevails. I mean, who on earth is offended or upset by their Christian name being used? I mean, get a grip. Honestly, there are bigger things in the world to worry about. Rachel Reeves is successfully, at the moment, crashing the economy.
Let's slow down. Let's not even talk about the economy. Let's talk about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 man. Today, whilst talking about AI, I thought he was talking about the A1 North. Dreary Starmer, that apologist for a Prime Minister, was asked twice, I'm not even playing it, so boring, asked twice if she, Rachel Reeves, from Accounts, would be Chancellor for the remaining time that he was Premier, and he didn't answer it. And this is another example, JG. Twice he wouldn't answer it. For 2 hours, the press go, hold on a minute, that's not great. I don't know what he's doing, probably gone off to see Lord Ali in Covent Garden. The office of the Prime Minister then released a statement saying she will be Chancellor for the rest of the Premiership. So I ask you, as the ex-Deputy Chair of the Tory party, if she turns out to be as we all believe she is, and he has to get rid of her, now he's going to be called completely incompetent. What is wrong with this man? What is wrong with this government?
Well, allegedly, he's also said to David Lammy that he'll be guaranteed to be Foreign Secretary as well. So we've got David Lammy, who's giving away British territory to the tune of £9 billion. That's 6 years' worth of winter fuel payments. And we've got Rachel from Accounts, who's made inflation go up, debt go up, borrowing go up, government interest rates go up, mortgage rates go up, and then, of course, the pound falling at the same time as well, which means the price of your food shop's going to get more expensive, your interest rates are going to stay higher on your mortgages, and the government's going to have to spend more and more money on servicing debt rather than investing in NHS, rather than investing in schools, or the government's going to come and say, we need to take more tax out of your pocket, more money.
But I thought this was because the poor Labour Party, when they arrived in 10 Downing Street, such a mess the Tories had made of it, there was a £22 million black hole. Now, I'm not an expert, but if I arrived, and I'm not, if they said, Jeremy Kyle, you're Prime Minister, and I walked into my office the first day and we owed £22 billion, I don't think I'd be giving my mates in the union another 11. I'd be trying to save 11. But by having given their mates the pay rises, we now run the risk of ruthless cuts to our public services, which is in itself slightly ironic because they're now going to end up, and I said that in 1979, I was old enough to remember, when Callaghan was in and every union wanted 30% and he gave it to 3 or 4, and when he realised he couldn't afford to give it to the other unions, guess what happened, JG? They all went on strike. Rubbish in the streets, rats everywhere, no ambulances, the army came in. because he couldn't afford it. And that is exactly, in my humble opinion, what will happen. Gave it to the junior doctors, gave it to those blimmin' train drivers, and now, genuinely mean that, everybody will want that money, and it ain't there. So they can either print it and inflation will go through the roof and we'll all be screwed, or they'll have to raise taxes and we'll all be screwed. And that's the reality, isn't it?
You've hit the nail on the head, Jeremy. In Stoke-on-Trent, for 14 weeks in a row, after the train drivers got their pay rise from 60 grand to 70 grand, we didn't have any train service on the Sundays, because guess what? Train drivers said it wasn't worth their time to work on a Sunday. Now Mick Lynch is saying he wants over £300 extra for drivers to come and work in on their off day. We've got Sadiq Khan, who's obviously allowing tube drivers to work 4 days a week.
Don't be disrespectful. Don't be disrespectful, Sir Sadiq.
Sir Sadiq, I know. So the biggest failure in London's history is managed to make sure that the tubes have got more expensive and drivers will actually work less. And then, as you say, we've got this other situation where we've had all this money for the NHS and no reforms, no understanding of how we're going to actually improve productivity. Labour said, if you want your social care fixed, you have to now wait till 2028 for another review. If you want to get your hospital waiting list from 18 months to 18 weeks, you now need to wait till 2029. They think the British public are daft. They think they can just say, we're really clever, we know what we're doing, just trust us. The British public have said very clearly, just like they said to the Conservatives when I was in power, we don't trust you, we don't like you, and we'll sit patiently, and when the time comes, we'll tell you where to go.
Barry isn't being rude. He says, I'd like to hear Jonathan Gullis just apologise for the shambles this country is in. His party are as complicit as Labour. What do you say to that?
No, absolutely. I've said that we've made mistakes. I'm embarrassed by the fact that net migration got to 900,000 in that last year. I'm embarrassed by the fact that we allowed the tax burden to get to the highest record it had done. I'm embarrassed that we increased corporation tax. I'm embarrassed that we didn't scrap foreign aid. I'm embarrassed that we didn't scrap the licence fee. I'm embarrassed that we didn't go harder when it came to, deregulating and using our Brexit benefits and opportunities there. I was one of those, I think, few Conservative MPs who didn't poke their head above the parapet, who said what they wanted, who said what they thought their constituents wanted to see be delivered, who said the case for conservatism. But the idea that some of the things that are happening now are the fault of the Conservatives for the birds. Rachel Reeves didn't have to scrap the winter fuel payments for £1.5 billion when she's giving £9 billion to the Chagos Islands. We didn't have to introduce a family farm tax when we're already giving the same amount of money that we're going to allegedly save, giving to foreign farmers overseas.
Don't start me on
these
that.
are political choices being made by the Labour Party, and it's no one else's fault but the Labour Party for the fact that the economy has seen debt go up, interest rates go up, inflation go up, mortgages go up under Rachel Reeves.
So you weren't a fan of the October budget then, JG?
No, it's a Halloween budget that continues to haunt this country. And the fact you've got businesses, let's not forget, as you've said many times, Jeremy, hospices, GP surgeries, pharmacists, all saying that this increase to employers' national insurance is going to screw them. And local councils are screaming because in Stoke-on-Trent, they're not even getting the full cost of the employers' national insurance for those directly employed by the council covered, let alone those who they procure through the private sector to deliver children and adult social care, which already costs 2/3 of Stoke City Council's budget. So imagine what that's going to do to grass cutting, bin collections. It's going to see services cut, streets getting dirty, grass being overgrown on the corners of our streets, and it'll be Labour who once again saunter off, and the Conservatives, I hope, coming back in to tidy up the mess and actually this time stay true to our principles.
Do you think the Conservative Party is being vocal enough under Baden right now? I want them to be more vocal. All the noise is coming from reform, JG. That's got to be truthfully. That's got to be said.
No, I think Kemi's been in some ways screwed over by the fact that Labour's just disintegrated so quickly that before she's had time, let's not forget, she had less than 2 months in the role to come in, to sort out Conservative campaign headquarters, to set up these policy commissions, to review where we went wrong and admit where we went wrong, and then come up with policies that are believable, that are deliverable and will deliver change. And restoring trust is going to take a hell of a long time, and there's a real risk that the Conservative Party may not ever recover from this position. We have to take the threat of reform very seriously.
Would you ever join reform?
The public is still angry with us.
Would you ever join reform?
I've I don't want to have to join another party. I've been a member of the Conservative Party my entire.
I know you have, but
life.
you said, and we've talked about this before, and if you don't know the answer, it's fine. But you said it might never recover. That's the first time I've heard anybody say that. The truth of the matter is that divine belief, a bit like the people who think that we'll talk about the NHS in a minute, a bit like the Labour Party believed, I think, before Boris Johnson won, that the North, anything north of Watford Gap, they vote for us because we're the working man and woman's party. Well, out of old tripe that turned out to be. I think the Tories are in a very dangerous position. I think the rhetoric, the bounce, everything that you want to say is coming from reform. I'm simply asking you, as somebody who would be to the right of the Tory party, who was appalled by many of the centrist policies, can you see yourself following other people and going to reform?
I'm going to fight for the heart and soul of the Conservative Party, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that Conservative parliamentarians understand that the level of distrust towards the Conservative Party after our record in office is so severe that no matter how bad Labour's doing, people are saying they're just as bad as the Conservatives, and trust in the two-party system is evaporated at this moment in time, and we've got one hell of a job on our hands if we're going to have any chance to rebuild that trust. And we have to take our time, admit where we went wrong, and come up with believable policies and talk to our values. And we may do all of that, and we may still not come out of it the other side. I hope we do, but we need to be serious about the challenge in front of us. And I don't think enough Conservatives have understood at this moment in time that just because Labour's doing badly, and because there's this lazy assumption that reform might implode, I don't think they will. UKIP survived for over 20 years, that somehow everyone's banking on Nigel having a fallout with Zia or with Richard. I've never seen them look more united than I do now. If we're lazy and complacent and just wait on other people to fail rather than have a plan of action that we ourselves control, then we are doomed to extinction as far as I'm concerned.
Couldn't agree more. Can I ask you, you talk about the Tory party and looking at where they went wrong. One of the most appalling things today, 500,000 people, we discovered today, have laid on hospital trolleys or floors for more than 12 hours in 2024. Ambulance crews in their hundreds stuck at A&E, missing thousands of 999 calls a day. It would be absolutely right and proper to say, and I think I was told earlier, there's been 39 health ministers since the health service was set up. Wes Streeting talks a good fight. Wes Streeting, I mean, I believe privatisation is the only way forward. I believe that the NHS, yes, loses money, but I believe is effectively been on a pedestal for that long, and we need to say it's not effective. We've got an older population, a bigger population. We're giving away private GPs appointments to illegal immigrants in hotels and not looking after 80-year-old women on the floor with broken hips. But my point is, a lot of that went on under a Tory government, my friend. What can you do differently? Because the NHS, people need to take their rose-tinted spectacles off and stop telling me the nurses and the doctors do a great job. Of course they do, but it's not meeting what the people who paid in for it expect from it. That's the problem.
Let me give you a quick summary, Jeremy. Under Blair, we had these PFI contracts, and in Stoke-on-Trent, we've got a hospital that spends £20 million a year servicing the debts. That's £20 million a year, not going to the front line. The Conservatives came in and then created all these NHS trusts. Now, in a city of 250,000 people, Stoke-on-Trent has 4 NHS trusts. That's 4 CEOs, 4 boards of directors, 4 headquarters. That's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds being wasted, again, not going to the front line. And then on top of that, as you say, we didn't do enough. We got caught in a race of who could promise to spend more money on NHS and not talk about how we can improve delivery. We need GPs working 7 days a week. We need to have GP practices operating longer hours so people don't go to A&E as a method of actually seeing, in their idea, a doctor. We need to make sure that we live healthier lives. So we need to have more action in preventative healthcare, and we most importantly need a social care system that works. And both Labour and Conservatives have to accept that we've both dodged the big question that's before us. 12,000 people in NHS beds right now that can't leave those beds because there's not a social care place for them.
I liked what Martin Gower...
honest conversation.
I like all of that. I like what Martin Gower said earlier, an ex-NHS trust. I put this to you. He said one of the things that I'd do, he said, you know that doctors, GPs are incentivised. This is bloody ridiculous, man. And I'm not a health secretary. Doctors are incentivised for the largest numbers of patients on the list. So if you've got 3,000 people on your list and you used to have 2,000... You get a tick. You get told that that's the right thing to do. Doctors, he said, should be judged and paid on how many people they see on a daily basis. Surely that makes sense. I've told the story in this show before about years ago when my son needed an ambulance and the ambulance came, and these two ladies who were fantastic and brilliant were telling me that it's so difficult for them now, for ambulance men and women, right? And I'm going to try and get this absolutely right, that if they arrive on time, right, and the person dies, that's a tick. But if they arrive late because the system's rubbish and they save a life, they've got a blot against their name. Everything to me is round the wrong way, JG. It doesn't make sense.
Well, this is why I'm partly worried about what Labour's done with the targets that they've set, because the problem is they've chosen a few narrow and I accept headline-grabbing targets to say we'll get these waiting lists down, but that means all the money and all the resources is going to go to those very narrow specific targets rather than look at the wider picture of healthcare in this country overall, which means that Labour will get the headlines potentially. And by the way, they've bet the house on this. So if they don't, I think that will be another blot against their name. But if they don't see waiting lists come down, if they don't see A&E pressures being eased, if they don't see cancer treatments being sped up, then where is that money gone? And I genuinely fear we're going to end up having another conversation about where on earth has all this money gone. It's gone to ridiculous PFI contracts. It's gone to ridiculous procurement rules. And like you say, we've got this DEI nonsense where people are being paid hundreds of thousands of pounds to push diversity, equity and inclusivity. We don't need people worrying about the colour of someone's skin. We just need someone to deliver healthcare.
It's really interesting. They said, you just made a really good point. He promised to crush the gangs and bring down immigration. Fact, that hasn't happened. He said, I won't raise taxes. That has happened. He said the public services will improve. We're hearing today of ruthless cuts, and you're right. He says he's going to bring the waiting list down. You're right. They've pinned their colours to the mast on many things that are probably unachievable. Just to sum up, JG, it's very easy. I liked your honesty. I think it's very easy for anybody in opposition, certainly be it Reform, the Tories, anybody to come here and say, this government is doing a bad job. I don't think I've known of such incompetence. In fact, I bought what Lord Ed Vaizey said earlier, that there doesn't seem... There's nothing proactive about Starmer and his cabinet. It's all reactive. There doesn't seem to be a plan. It's almost as if they're caught in the headlights most days, and that is not in any way. And I want to finish, right, with a text that sums up, and you're the first Tory MP that said this and admitted it. Chris in Newbury. Jezza. In my mind, every single disaster we face today was created by the Tories. No nuclear, Cameron, modern slavery, May, net zero, May, COVID lockdowns, Johnson. Every single problem we had, I can lay at their door, and I would be really incapable right now of being able to forgive them. You've admitted that. I'm not sure enough Tories know the depth of the anger. And I think that anger has been exacerbated because they've suddenly all looked at this shambles, this appalling socialist shambles that's there. And much as they go, do you know what? Keir Starmer's a bloody nightmare. I don't like this. Many people are going, that's the Tories' fault that they're in there. That's the problem you've got, right?
No, totally. Look, in 2019, the Conservative Party won on an anti-Corbyn, pro-Brexit ticket. Labour won in 2024 on an anti-Conservative ticket. The Conservative Party has to be clear. We need to bin off net zero. We can be pro-environment, but this net zero madness is going to make us colder, make us poorer, kill manufacturing, steel production, and other important sectors in this country. We need to scrap things like the licence fee that we've promised, that now Labour's even thinking about doing. We need to actually have a serious, credible plan on immigration, both legal and illegal. We need to get back to being the party of law and order, which means building more prisons so we can lock people up for longer and having good quality rehabilitation. We need to actually unleash business by reducing regulations, reducing tax, increasing incentives for apprenticeships, so we can not have this over-reliance on universities and be willing to say some universities may not survive, but guess what? We don't need 120 universities in the United Kingdom. We also then need to say with the NHS, the honest conversation, and the public, I think, are more ready than ever before. If you want the German healthcare model, the French healthcare model, or the Australian healthcare model, all of which Wes Streeting himself said were some of the best in the world, they use insurance schemes, some which are state-owned, but insurance schemes, and that only the poorest in society get free access, and the rest of us pay a little bit for an insurance scheme that means that we get good quality care. And I think it's time to have that frank and honest conversation, because throwing money into the money pit that is the NHS has not improved productivity, has not improved healthcare outcomes, and all we're seeing is more and more people putting burden upon the NHS and not actually resolving the issue itself. Mental health is a major issue in this country. We're not doing enough to intervene early enough. We've got physical health like obesity that costs £6+ billion a year. And I'm saying that as someone who would definitely be on the wrong end of the BMI scale. But people like me need to actually take responsible decisions to eat more fruit, eat more veg, do more exercise, so that when we get older, we don't have healthcare needs that require the NHS to always have to intervene. Personal responsibility, family values and the importance of family, and actually having an honest discussion about the fact we have a declining birth rate in this country. That means there'll be fewer younger people paying for a much larger older population in the future in retirement, which will only end up in bankrupting this country. It's time for serious, honest conversations.
Really appreciate your time, mate. Where are you? You've got like a notice board behind you. Did an alcoholics, like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting or something? What have you done?
No, I popped into Westminster to tell these Tory MPs to give their heads a wobble and make sure they take the fight to Labour and Reform and realise that they've got a hell of a lot of apologising to do first.
Good man, I really appreciate having you on. JG, Jonathan Gullis, former Deputy Chair of the Tory Party, thank you very much indeed. 6:23, we're live across the UK. Just very quickly, Christina says, Jez, the Conservative Party have too many factions and are fighting like rats in a sack. Jonathan Gullis is fighting, I'm afraid, a lost cause, especially after Tories voted not to have local elections. That's the last straw to many. What do you make of it all? 03444 499 1000. Text to 87222. We're coming back in 3. This is Talk Drive.
It didn't help business confidence, and business confidence is crucial, and we need business investment. So but the origins of that problem were before the last general election, where the Labour Party promised not to raise basic taxes on income, value-added tax. So they could have gone to the country and said, we've got a fiscal problem, everybody's going to have to contribute, but they didn't. They tied their own hands, and we were left with these rather damaging, business-unfriendly taxes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:27. This is Drive Time for Monday. You're welcome. Thank you for tuning in, by the way. JK till 7. Kevin O'Sullivan exclusive with Isabelle Oakeshott from 7 and the amazing Petri Hoskins at 10 o'clock. And do not forget, wherever you are, whatever you're doing in the morning, there's only one way to wake up with the leisure that is Michael Graham. He's the main man. He's the Don. He's the king. He's on at 6 o'clock in the morning, my mate's fantastic breakfast listening show. 0344 499 1000. So much to I feel like I've been speaking all bloody afternoon. The deputy editor of Conservative Home is one Henry Hill. Henry, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you, sir? You're looking very professional this afternoon.
Have you
got a sense of humour? You got a sense of humour?
Yeah. I'm trying to. The problem is I've got wireless earphones, so if I smile too much, they fall out. So I have to try and keep my serious journalism face
Okay,
on.
so I tried to get Tim Montgomery, but he wasn't available.
Well, I mean, we no longer work for the same place, but hopefully I can
it was a little joke. Henry, welcome to the show. Thank you so much indeed, my friend. Can I just start by being respectful to you, as I have been to every guest today? We feel this is important. Are you okay with Henry, or would you prefer Mr. Hill? Because there is a council in Sutton. I believe it's a Labour council. It's been criticised today for telling its staff to ask people for their Christian names, and they've been said if you do that, it could be offensive and affect their mental health. Most of us think this is hypersensitivity taken to ridiculous lengths, but we need to be respectful in this new world that we live in, Henry. So is Henry okay, or should it be Hill, in fact?
No, Henry's absolutely fine. And this council stuff is just mad, not least because if you look at the criticism and the advice they were given, it says ask them for their first name or given name or something else. And it's like, well, OK, if you're going to give them 3 different options, you might as well have 4, right? Christian name is one of the ways that we describe it. And I've never encountered anyone who's offended by being asked for their Christian name. I swear to God that some of these people exist only in the heads of the councils involved.
But what I don't get, mate, is look at Ukraine, right? Look at the Middle East and Gaza. Look at the wildfires in LA. Look at the rape gangs in the north of England. It goes on. And these, oh God, I'm going to get into trouble from Ryan. These idiots, man, are worried about you offending somebody if you use their first name. It's just the most consequential rubbish you can possibly imagine. And yet these people take this stuff seriously.
They do. I think part of it is just that if you're sort of one of these activists, it's always the quest to find the next thing, and then you get to be the person who thought of it, and you get to see other people having to jump through all of these hoops that you've set up, which must be incredibly gratifying. But I think the most irritating thing actually for me was the fact that this was framed explicitly, as you just said, in terms of affecting people's mental health. Yeah. Now do they mean irritating people? Because it was ridiculous the way that these days mental health used to refer more or less to mental illness, right? To people who were genuinely, for reasons that were beyond their control in some sense, struggling to interact with reality the way that other people do. And then it was expanded to cover all kinds of other things like feeling sad, feeling anxious, and so on. That's all now bracketed as mental health. But this, I'm sorry, if somebody
we've got a detractor in Scotland who says, over the top as usual, Jeremy. By referring to everyone as Mr. or Miss, I think you are missing the point of the guidance from the council. I doubt if anyone is truly offended by being asked for their first name, but I could see some people of some religions being annoyed at being asked for their Christian name. I'll leave that with you, Henry.
Oh, it was just, again, I think the question is, who are these people, right? Like, if you or I were resident in a country that had a different religious tradition, and it simply happened to be part of the culture there, long established, that it was, your first name was referred to as your Muslim name or whatever. Yeah, would you be offended? No. I think the thing with all of this is just, it takes a very patronising view of people of other faiths and cultures, because when you swap it around, when you try to imagine yourself in their position, then the behaviour that we're supposedly kowtowing to comes across as absolutely absurd. And yet we instead of thinking, oh, okay, well, maybe in fact the overwhelming majority of Muslims, Buddhists and whatever else are actually quite hard to offend and are fine with this, and there's no evidence of anyone actually complaining, we just project onto them these incredibly tender feelings in, I think, quite a patronising way.
Completely agree. It's been quite an interesting day. We don't need to get into too much detail, but interestingly, we can talk about there's going to be ruthless spending cuts. We can talk about AI, or the A1 as I call it. But the best part politically today was when Sir Drury Starmer was asked twice at a press conference earlier if he believed that Rachel Reeves from HR, or the accounts, whatever she is, would be in fact the Chancellor for his entire tenure. And he completely, I don't know if you saw it, H, he completely, I called you H, my son's called Henry, I call him H, I do apologise. He completely and utterly, blanked it, didn't answer it. A couple of hours go by, the press jump on the back. Now Downing Street has released a statement at 5 o'clock going, Rachel Reeves will be the Chancellor for the entire Labour government time, which now gives him an even bigger problem, because if she turns out to be as completely incompetent as we all think she is, and he has to get rid of her, he's going to look like an even more idiot. And then somebody told me an hour ago, he's made Lammy the same promise. You will be the Foreign Secretary for 5 years.
I mean, I don't know if Rachel Reeves has any enemies who dislike her enough to want her to have to be Chancellor for the full 5 years of Parliament if it goes on that long. I mean, it's cruel, but it is absurd. I mean, frankly, politicians, if we cut them a little bit of slack, there is never a winning position once the press start asking this question, because either you don't answer it, in which case they have the refusal to answer it is the story, or you do answer it and everyone is rightly sceptical, because we're 6 months in to a Parliament that will run for probably at least 4 years. How many chancellors, ever historically make it? Well, most ministers anyway. You need a really strong partnership. Gordon Brown and Tony Blair, for example, they went the distance. George Osborne and David Cameron. But there's no suggestion here that Rachel Reeves is an integral part of the Starmer project, not least because he doesn't really seem to have one.
I was going to say, yeah.
As all of these decisions rack up, she's already trashed the reputation for competence on economic matters that Labour had cultivated in opposition. Now we hear they're going to have to make spending cuts, more spending cuts, and then there's all of this other stuff. For example, she's currently pretending that she's going to bring in a massive increase in fuel duty, which no government has ever brought in. If she doesn't do that, that's another $4 billion a year black hole in her numbers right there. Every economic forecast for the next 3 years is going to be wrong, because they won't include the numbers for Labour's social care plan because they haven't come up with it yet. So she is going to be a lightning rod for anger at this government, and it is, I think, a certainty that at some point he is going to swap her out.
And then we've got David Lammy, the worst foreign secretary in the history of the world, who actually genuinely stood up some months ago and said green issues and the climate problems were a greater risk to the world than what's happening in the Middle East. He's guaranteed in the job as well.
I mean, I think the thing about the David Lammy promises, if he believes it, it at least explains why he appears to be not slightly concerned about even appearing good at his job. Yeah. One of the most egregious things very early on was David Lammy stood up in the House of Commons as Foreign Secretary, and he says about the deal in the Indian Ocean, and he said that the government has consulted the Chagossians, throughout this process. The Chagossians are the people who originally lived there.
Chagos Islands,
and then they came out the next day, even the same day, and they said, actually, no, they haven't. The government has completely frozen us out of this process. Now, that means he lied to the House of Commons. Now, I don't know if you remember, during Boris Johnson's tenure, lying to the House of Commons was a fairly serious deal, and everyone made lots of hay out of it, and yet doesn't appear to bother Starmer now that it's his Foreign Secretary doing it. Again, patronage is one of the powers that Sir Keir Starmer has. He has a very large parliamentary party, lots of backbenchers, therefore he'll never get to be a minister, and at some point halfway through this Parliament will work that out. He really, these baubles, these senior jobs, they're one of the biggest things he has to cultivate allies and keep his party in line. And by making these commitments, he's either going to look like a fool when he breaks them, or he will be a bigger fool if he keeps them.
It's really interesting. Can I ask you your take on this disgusting news today, my friend, and Conservative Home would have a really strong opinion on this, but I will be honest with you, because the Tories got this wrong. Hospitals are gridlocked, 518,000 patients in 2024. Let's not forget the Tories were in government for half of that time. Left on the floor and in corridors and on trolleys. Ambulances gridlocked outside A&E departments because of bed blocking. They can't get it. 999 calls being missed. I've long thought that it is not as basic an argument as so many people have about the NHS, which is, it needs more money, or no, it doesn't. It needs to get rid of the diversity managers and 16 receptionists. It needs to just tighten up and not take 2 paracetamol out of a packet of 60 and throw the rest away for health reasons. I believe the NHS was an amazing thing, but I don't think it's fit for purpose. And I think people, I've been saying it all afternoon, need to get it off a pedestal, stop revering it and say it doesn't work. It basically was set up to provide health care for people in this country who paid their stamp. It's now giving health to anybody and everybody who arrives on these shores, and I think it has to be in parts privatised if it's going to survive, and I just think that's part of its evolution, don't you?
Yeah, I agree with you. The NHS is not universal healthcare. Universal healthcare, the idea that every citizen at least should be able to receive healthcare.
Citizen, do you go to any foreign country and go to a hospital and get it free? No, you damn well don't. We are the only country, which might, my friend, be part of the reason why they come to this country all the time, because of what we give these people.
Yeah, and even if you're not one of the groups of, say, with permanent residency who have some entitlement to the NHS, because it doesn't charge you on the door, we sort of forlornly send the bill after you when you leave. But if you left the country, you have no reason to pay it. Universal healthcare is great. The NHS is not universal healthcare. It's a specific form of it, which is exclusively paid for through taxation and exclusively provided by one monolithic provider. And I think we are simply running up against the hard limits of what that model can do. Because as you say, it's not just about money. Between 2010 and 2023, the Tories increased the NHS budget in real terms, that's adjusting for inflation, by 25%. The simple fact is that we have an aging population, a shrinking working age tax base, and it's very hard to, as you say, police the NHS because there's no charge on the door for people who have no entitlement to it. So how on earth do you do that? The only way in that setting that you can actually ration healthcare at all is by actual rationing. It's by queues, it's by waiting lists, it's by making sort of firm decisions.
Had an NHS
money is not worth it.
Had an ex-NHS Trust chairman on earlier, Martin Gower, who made a really salient point. I would never have known this, what I've learnt today. He told me that doctors, I bet you know this, Henry, they get bonuses, adulation and a tick if they go from having 2,500 people on their list at their GP to 3,000. Not, as you would imagine in any effective business, the productivity of how many people you see a day. So if they increase in a year their numbers on their books by 20% and yet seeing people drops by 20%, that's a really good thing. That's ridiculous. They should be paid, presumably, on what they do and how many people they see, shouldn't they? That's just one facet. One facet.
Yeah, the challenge with that is that, as I said, the GPs are one of the groups that gatekeep access to the NHS. And so, therefore, the NHS is not hugely keen on having them see way more people. Look what happened in mental health. In recent years, there was a huge explosion in people getting private diagnoses for things like ADHD. That meant they paid cash, but they skipped the queue. But then they were entitled to the medication. Right? Now, the NHS queues for being seen for an assessment for something like ADHD are in some places 2 or 3 years. That's how they rationed it. And so all of a sudden, once you improve productivity, once you bring in the private sector and create those pipelines, that just increases demand on the surface at the end, and the NHS is not prepared to meet it. Now, he talks about privatisation. That scares some people, right? But think about this. Some NHS trusts, lots of people in this country have private health insurance, a huge number of people. Every month, those people stump up some cash. That cash goes to a private health company, and most of it goes to shareholders. Some NHS trusts, the big ones in London, they run their own private insurance schemes, right? Yeah. That means that if you have insurance with them, you pay your cash every month, and you'll be seen in a different bit of the hospital with nicer food and a shorter queue and, maybe not, comfier bed sheets and all the rest of it. But instead of going to shareholders, that money that people are spending is directly going back into that NHS.
Right, so that is the flipping answer by a mile, isn't it? That is there you have it. That's an absolute answer, isn't it? Ridiculous. Listen, mate, I could talk to you forever, Henry, and I really do appreciate your time. We have to crack on there. But Henry Hill, Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, thank you very much indeed. 20 to 7, live across the UK. Kev is here from 7 o'clock with his asylum. Petra's here from 10. We've got 20 minutes. Want to get your call on? So 344 499 1000. This is Talk Drive.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Do if you're on the radio. One is have a biscuit or a piece of cake, the other is sneeze just as you're coming back. I do apologise. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk Drive. We've got so many people who want to be on. Graham Dodd, Jezza, how about we're already paying for our bloody health service? Why would she have to pay for more of it? I pay my taxes, absolutely. Chris says, Jez, I think... he's got rid of that. Yeah, we've done that. This bloody system drives me nuts. Jez, I think the best alternative is a Christian name or equivalent, and then we can maintain the Christian... I don't understand that at all. Mr Hill said the Tories increased the NHS funding by 25%. They also increased our population by 2.5 million, says David Thomas. Hello to Barry. The Tories had several chances. It's too late for them. They've lost my trust. I've joined Reform. At least they don't have a bad record. Interesting. Hello to Sharon. She's been on. Also, Mark on the Isle of Wight. Brilliant. Jez, read the FA Cup scrapping replays. Why not make the lower teams play matches at home if they're drawn against a team from a higher division? If both teams are from the same division, then the fixture stays as it was drawn out of the bag. No idea. 0344 499 1000. Thank you, Mark, on the Isle of Wight. At the phone lines, we're going to Sheffield, the city of steel. Kenneth, you're on Talk Drive. Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Yourself?
Not bad from an old balding git, but apart from that...
Well, I'm 69 years old. I went to Turkey last year.
Oh, yeah? Got some new teeth?
They took me up to the hospital. The first two questions they asked me, was he insured and did he have money? I had to pay 347 quid up front before they even seen me.
I mean, listen...
Why don't we do that over here?
Because, and I am so with you, and it is one of those conversations for a long time that people will not have, because we've always, which I get, painted a picture of the United Kingdom being the country that would always do right by people, and I like that, but the world changed. And it changed, Kenneth, with COVID, it changed with the cost of living. People are suddenly saying, hold on a second, and I had a call the other day from a person, married, 2 kids, lives in Bury, always pays his tax, never had a lot of spare dosh, right? Facts, all of that, right? Never broken the law, never had a payout, nothing, right? Absolutely zilch. And he thinks there's people coming to this country and getting, you know, help from the NHS, right? I can't get anything. Your story is nailed on. Any person going to any other country from this country, you'd have to pay. Why don't we do it here and look after our own?
Exactly, and that's what annoys me. It's same with the council tax and everything. You know, I can't claim a penny because I'm £2 over. You know,
I'm telling you this, whether people tell me I'm outrageous or I'm being accused of everything. Illegal migrants who are waiting to be literally dealt with, okay? Private GPs are being sent to these 4-star hotels to make sure they're right. And I have nothing against those people, but here's what I'm going to say to you. Beverly, who's 80 and has paid her tax all her life, is lying in her house waiting for an ambulance because she's broken her hip and she can't damn well move. And then she's taken to a hospital and left on the floor. That's the problem. You've got to make sure about priorities. Kenneth in Sheffield, we appreciate you call. Let's head to York. What a beautiful city. My daughter over there at university. John, you're on Talk Drive. Good evening.
Good evening.
Oh, you got the radio on in the background, haven't you?
No, mate.
What?
No. Oh, it's off phone.
We're going to have to ring you back to get a better line. Let's try John again in York. 0344 499 1000. Don't forget as well, you can send a voice note. Have we not got that voice note from earlier? That seems to have disappeared. All right, OK. We're going to an ad break. We'll sort the phones out. We're coming back in 3.
of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, and Gavin Newsom share the lion's share of that blame because, as you mentioned, the water reservoirs were not filled. They have literally let billions of gallons of water, rainwater, and snow runoff flow into the Pacific Ocean rather than be retained to fill water reservoirs that could be used to fight fires. People ask me sometimes, Julia, what is the definition of liberalism? Well, the best definition we can see right now is that in Los Angeles, they had dozens of genders of firefighters.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, let's try again. Talk Drive, the home of common sense and free speech. Back to York. John, is that better line? Are we... Hello?
I can hear you clearly.
Fantastic. We can hear you as well, my friend. So what was it you wanted to talk about? Sorry about that. We'll try you back. What are you talking about?
No, it's fine, mate. Basically, fella, I tell you what, I'm one of the undeserving. I'm on all the benefits. I am ill. I've worked all my life, literally all my life. I run my own business in London, moved up to Yorkshire to slow down after I had a stroke and illness. And, you know, up here, I've got to be honest with you, the NHS have looked after me, but there is issues. I can't drive, and I get transport to and from my appointments at the hospital, and they are quite a lot. Do you know they actually send people on 150-mile, literally £150 round trip, basically taxi, to take me 15 minutes up the road? And that is a constant thing that I've found out, literally off the taxi drivers, I think, I've heard. You know, why are they not doing something local, using the ambulance service for that? But £150 a round trip just to get me to an hospital appointment.
Yeah, and what I love about your call is, right, because that's completely different to how I thought it was going to be, and I'm delighted, by the way. I'm going to make the point and make it again. You shouldn't be there saying undeserving. You worked all your life as a builder, paid your taxes, you got sick, you can't work, you can't drive. Absolutely, in my real humble opinion, you're the absolute reason that the NHS should survive. But the fact remains, and I love your story, spending 150 quid, that's a business decision. Get a local taxi, it's 30 quid, that's £120 a day. That is an exactly accurate example of how many... I mean, somebody told me... I told this story before, maybe you've heard it. A mate of mine's wife worked in A&E as a nurse, and somebody come in and they need to give them 2 paracetamol out of a packet of 6, so they throw away the other 58 because they could be contaminated. I mean, that's stupid, that's ridiculous. So I get that. What I'd like is your view on... You paid all your life. What's your view of the fact that the NHS is seemingly giving treatment to people who have never paid in, who don't and shouldn't actually deserve it? What's your view of that?
I don't think you should ask me that, because I don't think you can air my views on it.
Well, no, I can air your views as long as you're not being too outrageous. What's your view of people coming into this country illegally and yet getting a private GP to their 4-star hotel, where not you but other people in their 80s who have paid their tax all their life, their stamp, are lying on the floor waiting for an ambulance with a broken leg?
No, I don't agree with it, but I think there's a bigger picture there that people miss. You've got all these people, they come over, they go into the hospital, they have babies.
Yeah.
But when they have a baby, they suddenly get child benefit for 18 years. They just get a bank account in this country and it gets paid into that, child credit or whatever it is. They can go back abroad, but still the UK government is paying into a UK bank account all that money. I believe it was St George's in Tooting. They had over £8 million of foreign pregnancies 1 year. Now, that £8 million of foreign pregnancies also equivalates to child benefit back in the day. So
it just doesn't seem... I have this permanent battle, John, and I'm so chuffed to have you on. I have this permanent battle in my head between the country that I was brought up in, that led the world in humility and doing the right thing, and all the bedwetters will hate what I'm about to say, but as the world has changed, we seem to have not toughened up, and much as I want to help everybody else, I want to help our own first, and I don't care if that sounds wrong, and for years you could never say that without being termed racist. And last week Donald Trump was ridiculed because he said, you know what I'm going to do for the American people after January the 20th? I'm going to make sure they're more prosperous, they're safer, they're healthier, and that I look after them. Now, with the greatest of respect, I'd say that's fantastic. I'd say that's exactly what we want to hear. But many people will jump up and down and say, that's heartless, that's unfair. What do you say to those people?
Well, I agree with you, absolutely. You know, apparently, according to Labour, we're all right-wing, literally. Yeah. You know, I've got people like friends of mine, one's from Kenya, his wife's from South Africa. Talk about right-wing. Oh, how far can you get all apart right there? He's black, she's white, and yet, you know, they're my good friends. It's just a joke nowadays. Whatever you say, you're classed as racialist. Whatever you say, you're classed as it's immoral. I mean, I'll give you an example, and I was fuming. We went to a restaurant, my daughter, my son-in-law, my wife, and my granddaughter. The girl actually came up and said, what would they like? And she's gorgeous. You can see she's a girl. I was fuming.
They called your granddaughter they?
Yeah, but obviously she was a teenage girl working there. She's been told to do that. I was fuming.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll make you fume even more. Bearing in mind, you're my favourite caller ever, and you've had a hard time. I had a call on 6 months ago, a year ago, from a midwife who had been sacked after 26 years' work, right, because she said, as she delivered the child, you have a beautiful, beautiful girl. And the parents went nuts at her and said, it's not for you to decide the sex of our daughter. And they complained to the health authority or whoever, and she got a written warning. And it was a baby girl. Genuine story.
Who was the written warning from? A cat?
Probably, mate. Listen, great to have you on, and I'm really pleased that you keep it talk. Thank you so much indeed, John in York. Let's go to Carlisle. Mark, sorry, we've talked too much. You've got 1 minute, mate. Only a minute. What do you want to say?
Nearly died 3 times because of direct shortages of beds and ambulances. I didn't know it at the time, but it was burst appendix. Went in. They eventually got through 7 hours of waiting, and the doctor was enthusiastic to look at it. I'd heard for 6 hours ranting about there's no beds, there's no beds. All of a sudden, he was overrode by registrar and given me paracetamol and sent me home. 3 days later, I'm back in emergency, and then what happened was I was screaming so much in A&E, they removed me because it was like antisocial. As I was getting dragged out of the hospital into the car park by the security and a care worker, not a nurse or a doctor seen me, rescued me that night, emergency operation, life-saving, 9-hour operation to save my life. 5 weeks in hospital, all because there was no beds.
Listen, there's not much I can resonate with, but my appendix burst. I had peritonitis and septicemia. I hope you're well. Thank you for your call. What is it? 3 minutes to 7, which means it's 3 minutes away from a man who is to broadcasting what Elon Musk is to personal relationships. Kevin O'Sullivan, good evening, sir.
Incendiary, you mean? Incendiary.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How about you?
I'm good. My voice is back. There's a spring in my step, and my hat is at a jaunty angle.
Yes.
What's happening? You've got a special with Isabelle. What are you with Isabelle up to tonight?
It is the Welsh Refugee Council has sort of teamed up with this school to put out a video to entice asylum seekers and sanctuary seekers, also Ukrainians as well, but all of them. Anyway, the video is little underage schoolgirls saying, why don't you come and live in Wales? Now, given what we know about the grooming gang scandal, wouldn't you think that that was not a wise video to put out?
I would have thought that, and you might also, because I told Isabelle this, we had a lovely 27-year-old girl on earlier from Milton Keynes in her local doctor's surgery, Kev. There are posters that say, we will look after you, even if you're an illegal with no papers, come and we'll see you. It's a joke, man.
Yeah, I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, you can't have little girls saying, come to live in Wales. So we'll be covering that, obviously. Also, Farage attacking West Streeting, saying he's still covering up for the